On a cold December night in 2011, 13-year-old Erica Lynn Parsons vanished without a trace. Her parents claimed she had gone to live with her biological grandmother, but their story raised suspicions. As investigators began to dig deeper, unsettling details emerged: stories of bruises, unexplained absences, and a plastic tote that became impossible to overlook. What truly happened to Erica, and why did it take years for the truth to be revealed? This is a tragic story of a girl who was silenced, but whose story would not remain hidden. Erica Lynn Parsons was born on February 24, 1998, Carolyn Parsons' child. Carolyn separated from her husband, Steve, who was not the biological father, before Erica was born. Despite her small size, Erica was a lively baby. However, just days after her birth, Carolyn had to make a difficult decision due to financial struggles. She chose to put Erica up for adoption to give her daughter a better future. Although Erica's biological father was not in the picture, Carolyn's former brother-in-law and sister-in-law, Sandy and Casey Parsons, chose to adopt Erica. Erica became part of the Parsons family when she joined them at just 4 weeks old. Although the adoption was officially completed in 2000, Sandy later suggested that it actually took place in July instead of March. Casey Parsons happily remembered those early days, saying they had her from the time she was 4 weeks old. By the time the adoption was finalized, she was already calling them Mama and Daddy. They were the only parents she had known. Sandy and Casey had a tumultuous relationship. They got married in the early 1990s and had 3 children. However, their marriage was marred by incidents of domestic violence. Sandy was convicted of assaulting Casey in 1994 and 1997, leading to court-ordered probation and community service. Despite these challenges, they stayed together and welcomed another child, Erica, into their family. Concerns about Erica's safety arose in 2002 when social services started investigating allegations of abuse in the Parsons home, dating back to when Erica was only 2 years old. These allegations raised significant worries about how the family treated their adopted daughter. The Department of Social Services initiated an investigation into claims that Erica had been physically abused. Reports indicated that Casey Parsons often used a belt to discipline Erica, which resulted in visible bruises. Observers noted marks on Erica's buttocks, the back of her legs, and the side of her face. It was also reported that Erica sometimes refused to eat, and that Casey had told her she was not loved. During the interview with the Department of Social Services, Casey denied the claims of abuse. The investigator noticed that Erica seemed comfortable around her parents, sitting on their laps without any signs of fear. However, it was noted that Erica was quite small for her age, weighing only 41 pounds at 4 years old. To ensure Erica's safety, a safety plan was put in place. Casey and Sandy Parsons agreed to use non-physical methods of discipline, including timeouts and grounding, committed to providing a safe and stable home for Erica. On March 1, 2003, Casey went to Mexico for a medical procedure to reverse her tubal ligation. Later that year, in August, Erica started attending Boston Elementary School. The staff remembered her as a shy but kind girl who smiled frequently and had a fondness for stickers. One teacher noted that Erica would push her bangs out of her face when she felt nervous and would shine with pride when she received compliments. In January 2004, Casey announced online that she was pregnant, expecting a child in September. Around this time, the Department of Social Services received a complaint about the Parsons family, which prompted officials to visit their home. The complaint alleged that Erica was weak and that Casey no longer wanted her, asserting that the parents had attempted to give her away. Casey and Sandy denied using physical punishment, stating they raised their voices instead of hitting their children. They also explained that Erica suffered from gastrointestinal issues, causing her to vomit food she didn't like, and denied any threats to withhold food or give her away. When the Department of Social Services interviewed Erica in private, she described discipline as timeouts or loss of privileges, and mentioned that she might get spanked for very serious misbehavior, although Erica seemed happy and well-connected with her adoptive parents. Investigators noted her small size and frailty. The Department of Social Services required the Parsons to seek medical care for Erica if her eating issues continued or if her development fell behind. Nonetheless, evidence of neglect was found, as Erica was not receiving necessary medical treatment. She was then placed with her aunt, who noticed that Erica was wearing toddler-sized clothes and was severely underweight. While living with her aunt, Erica began eating regularly, playing, and gaining weight. She also revealed that Casey and Sandy had physically disciplined her. However, the aunt did not pursue legal custody. After 8 months, Casey and Sandy regained custody of Erica. In 2004, Erica moved to a different elementary school. On August 20th of that year, Casey gave birth to a daughter. By 2005, Casey was pregnant again, but unfortunately experienced an early miscarriage. She then started a business. Some reports describe this business as a Chihuahua puppy mill, although specific details were limited. Later that year, Erica was homeschooled through a program created by Casey at their home. Casey was the chief administrator, and the state did not require background checks or detailed progress reports for the school. Records indicate that the program enrolled 3 girls and 1 boy, but there were no annual achievement test scores submitted from 2005 onwards. After this, information about Erica became difficult to find. On July 30th, 2013, Erica's 19-year-old brother, Jamie Parsons, argued with their parents and reported Erica missing. Jamie testified that the last time he saw Erica was on November 19th, 2011. She was standing in a corner, which was a common punishment Erica endured. She didn't look well. She looked like a zombie, he said. She said she didn't feel well. She said she couldn't breathe. Casey Parsons heard this and told her to shut up. When he woke up the next morning, his parents had left early, which was unusual, and Erica was gone. His parents returned home without Erica, and he sensed something was wrong. Jamie felt this explanation was strange, especially since his father, Sandy, appeared very upset when talking about Erica's absence. He recalled his father looking extremely pale and anxious. When he asked his parents where she was, they claimed they had taken her to Asheville, North Carolina, to stay with her biological grandmother, who supposedly reached out on Facebook to reconnect with her. Jamie told the authorities that this was the last he had heard about Erica. An investigation into Erica's disappearance began immediately. Detectives conducted a thorough search of the Parsons' home, lifting floorboards, examining the yard for possible hidden graves, and following every lead available. Despite their hard work, Erica's location remained unknown. They received countless tips and reports, including supposed sightings of her on the roadside and calls from psychics, but none provided any solid answers. The FBI got involved, offering rewards and drawing national attention to the case. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children created an age progression photo to show what Erica might look like at 15 based on her appearance at age 9. These images were widely distributed on billboards in hopes of generating new information. Authorities were committed to finding Erica. Casey and Sandy told investigators that the last time they saw Erica was in December 2011 at a McDonald's in Mooresville, North Carolina. They claimed they took Erica to meet her biological grandmother, Irene Nan Goodman. Additionally, Casey and Sandy were unable to provide any contact information for Erica's grandmother, including the Facebook profile they said she used to communicate with them. The lead investigator put in a lot of effort to find Erica's grandmother and searched for people with her name in Asheville, but he found no evidence of anyone related to Erica. By August 2013, detectives publicly stated their belief that the story about Erica's grandmother was false. They also noted that Sandy and Casey were not cooperating with the investigation. Around the same time, Erica's biological mother, Carolyn Parsons, traveled to North Carolina to help the investigators. On August 21st, Casey and Sandy appeared on the Dr. Phil show, where they argued that Erica was not actually missing, but was a rebellious teenager who simply chose not to communicate with them. During the show, Casey mentioned that Erica's grandmother had told her that Erica refused to come home after staying with her for 2 months. Casey told Dr. Phil that Erica did not bring any of her personal belongings because when she went to stay with the Goodmans, they bought all new clothes for her to wear. When the Goodmans picked her up, a woman nicknamed Strawberry was also there and showed them a pile of clothes with tags in the back of their truck. The house where she was allegedly staying had a horse stable. The Parsons claimed that they also brought their other daughter, Brooke, along to bring Erica to Asheville. Brooke disputed this claim in her own interviews with the police, saying that she never rode a horse to Asheville to bring Erica to live there. Casey also claimed she attempted to contact Erica's grandmother, but the phone number was no longer in service, which she interpreted as Erica blocking their number. Although they appeared on national television, Casey and Sandy claimed they were good parents and insisted that Erica was safe. However, investigators were skeptical due to noticeable inconsistencies in their story. In September 2013, Casey opened her home to the media, showing Erica's old bedroom. But by then, public and official concern about Casey and Sandy's account was growing. The search for Erica continued as worries mounted about her well-being since her last confirmed sighting in 2011. Detectives on Erica Parsons' case had long suspected that Casey and Sandy were withholding important information. They believed that separating the couple might reveal the truth, as Casey seemed to dominate Sandy. However, it proved difficult to keep them apart until investigators discovered a significant error. The Parsons were still collecting adoption assistance and food stamps for Erica, even though she had not lived with them for 2 years. They received monthly checks of $634 in adoption assistance and continued to cash those checks after Erica was no longer living with them. They also continued to claim Erica on their tax returns. These federal benefits, meant for Erica's care, became crucial in involving the FBI. Casey pleaded guilty to 15 charges, while Sandy opted for trial. A jury found Sandy guilty on most charges in October 2014. The jury did not accept Sandy's claim that Casey had been in charge of the fraudulent activities and that he was unaware of their financial situation. At a sentencing hearing in federal court on February 18, 2015, Jamie Parsons and Robin Ashley testified about Erica's abuse by the Parsons family. Federal prosecutor Anand Ramaswamy stated that there was no record of Erica during the time her adoptive parents were receiving illegal money. Declare. The reason is that she is no longer alive. The hearing was continued until March 27th. Prosecutors also presented evidence of a series of scams allegedly perpetuated by Casey Parsons. In 2000, Casey was hired to be a surrogate mother. She became pregnant and took a payment of $10,000 for her services. Weeks later, she called the biological mother, Amy Miller, to say that she had miscarried. Miller says she believed Casey was still pregnant, as Casey refused to turn over medical records, changed her phone number, and sent her nasty emails. Casey then offered to sell the baby to her own sister, Robin, who in turn searched for Miller online to tell her Casey was indeed still pregnant and that Casey had taken money from 2 other couples who wanted to adopt the baby. Miller was able to take custody of her child at birth after getting law enforcement involved. Evidence was also presented of an eBay scam, where Casey accepted money for items listed on eBay but never sent the items. Judge Schroeder called Casey a serial swindler. On March 27, 2015, U.S. District Court Judge Thomas Schroeder sentenced Casey Parsons to 10 years in prison and Sandy to 8 years for fraud. Schroeder believes that Casey was the mastermind behind the events in question and stated that Erica suffered terrible abuse, noting that the fraud distracted investigators from other matters. The judge also mentioned that there was no evidence indicating that Erica was alive. In 2016, there was a significant breakthrough when Sandy, after more than 3 years of deception, confessed that Erica had died 5 years earlier at the age of 13. On September 29th, Sandy led investigators to Erica's remains. They were buried in a small grave near Sandy's mother's home on Blair Hendrick Road, between the towns of Pageland and Mount Croghan, South Carolina. Prior to the discovery, detectives recovered items during a search of a shed on Sandy's property, including a videotape, a hammer, teeth, and school records. There, Sandy quickly indicated the location of a shallow grave where he and Casey had buried Erica. Detectives noted that Sandy was somber and tearful during his confession. Sandy described the events leading up to Erica's death in December 2011. He was awakened by Casey, who informed him that Erica had died. Casey had placed Erica's body in a plastic tote, where it remained for 2 days while they figured out what to do. During this time, they continued with their lives and even attended a Christmas party. Eventually, they took Erica's remains to a site in Chesterfield County to bury her. To try to cover up any evidence, they poured bleach over her body. To avoid being tracked, they removed the batteries from their phones during their trips to the burial site, once to dig the grave and a second time to dispose of Erica's remains. After nearly 5 years of being hidden, Erica's body was finally found. Investigator Chad Moose led the effort to recover her remains, ensuring that she was treated with respect after her tragic life. To honor her, her remains were placed in a body bag that was left unzipped, allowing her to be at peace and no longer in darkness. Moose also added a stuffed animal to the bag while transporting her back to Rowan County. Finding Erica provided closure to a case that had troubled the community, and she was finally buried with the love and dignity she deserved. As one investigator noted, Erica received more love from the community than from her adoptive family. Investigators believed from the beginning that Casey Parsons was primarily responsible for what happened to Erica. They did not reveal the finding of Erica's remains in 2016, hoping that Casey would eventually confess. When faced with questions, Casey firmly denied any participation. She repeatedly claimed, "I've never been there," rejecting all allegations of abuse or misconduct. However, the evidence in the form of Erica's remains revealed a chilling account of ongoing and severe abuse. On October 14, 2016, Erica's remains were sent to the medical examiner, who took 3 months to carefully examine her skeleton. The results were heartbreaking. Erica had suffered severe and ongoing abuse, with injuries all over her body affecting her face, torso, back, and limbs. She had multiple fractures, including broken bones in her shoulder blades and ribs that had partially healed before being broken again. Some of the injuries showed signs of long-term trauma, with new bone growth trying to heal the damage. It was evident that Erica had faced continuous physical violence. Her brother, Jamie Parsons, confirmed the extent of the abuse in interviews. He described how Erica was regularly beaten, often with belts or remote controls, and mentioned friendly reminders, a cruel term used by Casey for bending Erica's fingers back until they almost touched her wrist. Erica experienced more than just physical violence. She was also starved for long periods, severely affecting her growth. By the time she was 13, her bones resembled those of a typical 9-year-old. This combination of abuse and neglect was considered torture, marking an extreme level of cruelty rarely seen in cases of child abuse. Family photos highlighted Erica's suffering as well. While her siblings looked happy and carefree in their pictures, Erica was often shown standing alone, facing a corner. These images powerfully illustrated her isolation and the neglect she faced, making the contrast between her siblings' joy and her own mistreatment deeply tragic. On June 18, 2017, Erica was finally laid to rest in a funeral organized and funded by the Rowan County community. Hundreds of people attended, wanting to show Erica the love and respect she never received during her life. On February 19, 2018, a grand jury indicted both Sandy and Casey Parsons on counts of first-degree murder, felony child abuse, inflicting serious injury, felony concealment of death, and felony obstruction of justice. Casey Parsons was brought to Rowan County for a court appearance on March 14, 2018, while Sandy Parsons was brought back for a court hearing on March 15. Prosecutors announced in April 2018 that they were seeking the death penalty for both Casey and Sandy Parsons. As of February 2019, defense attorneys agreed to separate trials. Casey Parsons pleaded guilty to first-degree murder on August 2, 2019 in Rowan County Superior Court and was sentenced to life without parole. The trial date for Sandy Parsons was set for April 6, 2020, and his attorney requested a change of venue. Sandy Parsons pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, child abuse, concealment of death, and obstruction on December 17, 2019, and was sentenced to at least 33 years to be served after his federal sentence. On January 14, 2022, according to the Federal Bureau of Prisons website, Sandy Parsons was released from federal custody after completing his sentence for tax and mail fraud in connection with benefits received on behalf of Erica. That same day, he began serving a state sentence in Central Prison. Federal Bureau of Prisons records show Casey Parsons was released from federal custody November 25, 2023, to begin serving her state sentence. At that time, her husband was listed as a prisoner at Alexander Correctional Institution. The motivations of the Parsons are still not fully understood, but their actions indicate a profound level of cruelty and neglect. Erica was treated inhumanely, enduring unimaginable suffering from those who were supposed to care for her. As her community honors her memory and strives for justice, there is hope that policies and systems will be improved to prevent similar tragedies in the future. Erica, now at peace, will always be remembered.
Perry March was born in 1961 to Arthur March and Sephora. He and his wife, Janet, were complete opposites of each other. He is ordinary, but his wife was a very bright, beautiful woman, dreamy and talented. Janet grew up in a wealthy family, as the daughter of a well-known lawyer from Nashville. Janet and Perry met as students at the University of Michigan in the early 1980s and quickly became inseparable. When Perry graduated and moved to Chicago to work as a financial broker, Janet followed him without hesitation. However, she soon began to miss her home and family. To support Perry's education, her father agreed to pay for his expensive tuition at the prestigious Vanderbilt Law School. As a result, Janet and Perry returned to Nashville, and since Perry was hesitant, it was Janet who proposed to him in Percy Warner Park. They got married in 1987 and moved into a house in a well-known area of the city, which was rented and paid for by Janet's father. The following year, Perry graduated and chose to work for a local law firm in Nashville instead of accepting offers from large firms in New York. In 1990, Janet gave birth to a son named Samson, affectionately called Sammy. On the surface, this family seemed to have everything: a mother, a father, and a son. Unfortunately, this outward appearance of happiness was deceptive. In 1991, a scandal emerged at the law firm where Perry worked after a young female specialist received an inappropriate proposal from a colleague. A stranger sent her a letter expressing his attraction to her and his desire for an intimate relationship. Feeling embarrassed, the young woman reported the incident to her boss. After this, 2 more letters arrived, urging her to respond to the proposal by leaving a message in the firm's library. In response, the firm took measures to identify the sender of these inappropriate letters. They installed a CCTV camera in the library where she was supposed to leave her reply. When the man came to collect the letter, the firm's lawyers were shocked to discover that he was Perry March, the husband of Janet. Faced with evidence from the video, Perry refused to confess. The law firm gave him an ultimatum: resign or be fired. He chose to resign. This uncomfortable situation led to legal consequences, as the female employee who received the unwanted proposal sued Perry for financial compensation. He was ordered to pay her. To avoid a harassment claim, she requested $25,000, half of which Perry was to pay in monthly installments, while the remaining $12,500 was to be paid in a lump sum. This arrangement was made to keep his wife, Janet, from discovering the scandal. In 1994, Janet and Perry welcomed their second child, a lovely daughter named Sephora. As their family grew, they decided to build a larger home and purchased nearly 2 acres in the affluent suburb of Forest Hill. Over the next year, they worked on constructing their dream house, a $650,000 mansion designed in the French country style. Janet was very enthusiastic about the project and closely oversaw every stage of the construction. However, her demands were sometimes unreasonable, leading Perry to step in and help mediate between her and the construction team. Although the new house brought excitement, Janet and Perry's marriage was facing difficulties. Their relationship had been strained for several months, and they frequently attended therapy, both together and individually. At home, they rarely communicated. Perry was often away for at least 3 days a week, and their arguments escalated whenever he returned. A family therapist suggested they take a break from each other, but Janet was adamant about getting a divorce. In August 1996, a significant incident occurred that changed the course of Janet and Perry's relationship forever. Perry needed to pay the final installment to a woman at a law firm, but, due to financial issues, he sent her a letter requesting to postpone the payment until October. Unfortunately, Janet read the letter, which led to a heated argument between them. In the aftermath, Janet contacted her mother to arrange a meeting with a divorce lawyer. On August 15, 1996, Janet was scheduled to meet with the lawyer but never arrived at the office because she mysteriously disappeared that night. Perry claimed that Janet left voluntarily after their argument. He told the police that she expressed a desire to get some space to think but did not specify where she was going. He said that at around 8:30 p.m., Janet packed a suitcase, took her passport and $1,500 in cash, and left in her car. He also mentioned that she left him a list of tasks to complete before her return. After she left, he informed friends and family of her departure as he normally would. The next morning, Deneen Beard, the maid, came to clean the house and was surprised to find everything in order. However, Perry asked her to focus on her work and not to go into the children's room. Then a nanny named Ella Goldschmidt, who had previously arranged with Janet that her son would play with Sammy, arrived. After Deneen left, Ella noticed Sammy jumping on an oriental rug that was rolled up on the floor next to the playroom. When she returned around 2 p.m. to pick up her son, the rug was no longer there. Initially, Janet's family believed Perry's explanation. Janet's father went to Nashville International Airport to check if Janet had left her car there. Janet's mother, Carolyn, became increasingly worried, as her daughter would not just vanish without a word and would never abandon her children. Although Carolyn wanted to contact the police, Perry convinced her to wait 12 days, claiming that Janet had said she would return by then. That evening, Perry called his father, Arthur, a retired U.S. Army lieutenant colonel living in Jalisco, Mexico. Arthur readily agreed to travel to Nashville to support his son during this challenging time. In the meantime, Janet's family's concerns continued to escalate. With August 25th being Sammy's 6th birthday, fears grew that something had happened to Janet. She would definitely not miss such an important occasion. While Perry and Janet's parents told the party guests she had traveled to California to visit her brother and was postponing her return due to an ear infection, her sudden disappearance raised alarm among her loved ones. Days passed without any news from Janet, and the anxious waiting could not go on much longer. On August 29th, Janet's parents reported her missing to the police. Detective David Miller, a skilled investigator with extensive experience, was assigned to the case. He initiated the investigation by reaching out to hospitals and reviewing Janet's bank and credit card accounts, which had not been used since her disappearance, raising concerns about her well-being. On September 7th, authorities located Janet's car in a parking lot at an apartment complex about 5 miles from her home. The car appeared to have been parked there for several weeks. Inside, police discovered Janet's bag, which contained her documents, passport, credit cards, and $11 in cash. They also found a suitcase filled with clothes, notably absent of a bra, toothpaste, a comb, or underwear, which seemed unusual. Additional evidence included a pair of white sandals in the glove compartment and unusual, dirty bicycle tire tracks near the car. Investigators needed to analyze this evidence carefully. On September 10, 1996, Perry was questioned by investigators and consented to a search of his home. The police conducted the search over the weekend of September 14th to 15th while Perry was away in Chicago with his children. The house showed no signs of domestic violence or anything noteworthy. A few days later, the owner of a tire store contacted law enforcement to inform them that Perry had visited the store on August 21st, a week after Janet went missing. Perry inquired about purchasing a new set of tires, despite the good condition of those already on his car. When asked why he wanted a different brand, his response raised further suspicions. On September 18th, Perry decided to move to Chicago with his children. Before leaving, he had a concerning conversation with Janet's longtime friend, Diane Sachs, which she later reported to the police. Perry asked Diane if she thought he could kill his wife. Although she hesitated to answer, he proceeded to ask the disturbing question of what she would think if he had loaded Janet's body into his car and taken it to a remote location for disposal. This raised serious suspicions about him. As a result, the police launched a comprehensive search for Janet, involving divers, 2 helicopters with thermal scanners, specially trained dogs, police officers, and volunteers. Meanwhile, Perry hired a lawyer, who informed the police that Perry would not cooperate with the investigation. In November, as Janet's parents held a day of mourning for her, Perry chose not to attend, further increasing the police's suspicions about him. Over time, a theory about Janet's disappearance began to develop. It was suggested that Perry and Janet had a heated argument the night she disappeared. During this argument, Janet may have said something that provoked Perry, leading him to strike her hard. Given that Perry held a black belt in martial arts, a single blow could have killed her, or he might have strangled her. Whether intentional or not, when he found Janet dead at his feet, he was faced with a dire decision. Investigators believe that Perry hid Janet's body either in the basement, in the woods, or near their home. Furthermore, Ella had mentioned that there was a rolled-up rug that she had noticed in Perry's house that morning. Janet's body may have been inside that carpet, and tragically, little Sammy may have unknowingly played around his mother's body. Afterward, Perry moved her body to his Jeep and drove to a location where he buried it. He then drove Janet's car to where it was later discovered, taking her mountain bike with him so he could ride it back home. However, these are merely speculations, and the police were tasked with uncovering evidence of the murder, marking a new phase in the investigation. Janet's father, a prominent lawyer, was determined to uncover the truth about his daughter's disappearance. Meanwhile, Perry applied to become the manager of Janet's estate, but her parents opposed this and filed their own petition. Perry refused to consent. Ultimately, the court designated a guardian to oversee Janet's property and ordered Perry to return some items he had taken. He only returned them after being urged to do so. This was just the beginning of a legal dispute between Perry and Janet's parents. The battle continued until late 1999 when the court granted Janet's parents the right to visit their grandchildren. They traveled to Perry's new home in Illinois, eager to see the children, but were shocked to discover that he had moved to Mexico to be with his father. Moreover, just weeks after relocating, Perry married a local woman named Carmen Rojas. 3 years had passed since Janet went missing, and she still had not been officially declared dead. This prompted her parents to file a lawsuit against Perry for the manslaughter of their daughter. When Perry did not appear in court to contest the charges against him, the judge ordered him to pay $113.5 million in compensation to Janet's parents in May 2000. Janet's parents traveled back to Mexico to confront Perry and requested to meet his children. He firmly refused their request, prompting them to return to Nashville. A month later, they returned to Mexico with a court order and assistance from local police, who arrested Perry for violating his visa. Although the charges were eventually dropped, by the time Perry got back home, his children were missing. Taking advantage of Perry's absence, Janet's parents took the children to the U.S. and sought permanent custody once they were home. This led to a direct confrontation and sparked another legal battle for custody. Ultimately, Perry regained custody, and Janet's parents were reprimanded for unlawfully taking the children. Later, the Tennessee Court of Appeals overturned Perry's manslaughter conviction. At this point, Perry believed he could lead a stable life in Mexico with his new wife and children, feeling confident that nothing would disrupt his plans. However, unexpected developments were on the horizon as the local police department, along with 2 investigators, continued to actively investigate Janet's case. In the latter half of 2004, the prosecutor's office introduced new evidence that led to a retrial, during which 59 witnesses were heard. This resulted in charges against Perry for second-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and abuse of a corpse. In October 2005, an arrest warrant and a request for extradition to the United States were issued for Perry. While being transported, Perry was accompanied by Pat Postiglione, one of the detectives involved in the investigation. During the journey, Perry was quite talkative and asked the detective whether he could face murder charges if an accident occurred. He also told Pat that he would be willing to confess everything if he could receive a sentence of no more than 7 years. The detective stated that he would pass this information on to the district attorney. Janet's parents were determined not to allow Perry to enjoy a new life after spending a short time in prison. They submitted a new petition for custody of the children, which the judge approved. Facing difficulties in the legal system, Perry sought another solution. He attempted to persuade his cellmate, Russell Ferris, to kill Janet's parents. Russell became interested in the plan and learned that Perry's father, Arthur, would act as the intermediary. After 2 months of discussions among the three, Russell's lawyer notified the police about Perry's offer to kill Janet's parents. From that point on, Perry's situation became increasingly complicated. Initially, the evidence against Perry for murder was weak and mostly circumstantial. His lawyer argued that there was no solid proof that Perry had committed the crime. If he had been found not guilty, he could not be tried again for the same offense. However, the situation changed dramatically with the discovery of a murder-for-hire plot involving Janet's parents. Now, the police had recorded conversations revealing details of the planned murder, including statements made by both Perry and his father, Arthur. When Arthur listened to the recordings, he realized his errors and agreed to testify against his son in exchange for a more lenient sentence. The disturbing truth emerged. Arthur, Perry's father, revealed that his son had confessed to him about killing Janet. A few weeks after the murder, Perry sought his father's help because he was anxious about the body being discovered. He asked Arthur to help hide it. One night, they drove to a location where, according to Arthur, the body was already decomposing and stored in a bag. Arthur recounted loading the remains into Perry's Jeep. They then traveled north to Bowling Green, Kentucky, where they stayed at a motel. Under the cover of darkness, Arthur attempted to dispose of the body. He looked for a body of water deep enough to conceal the remains but was unable to find one before sunrise. Eventually, he located a suitable spot. Arthur later attempted to guide investigators to the location where he had hidden the body, but he couldn't specify the exact spot. However, both the police and the jury believed his account of the incident. According to Arthur, after Perry killed Janet, her body remained in their home for some time, wrapped in a rug. Unfortunately for Arthur, his confession did not yield the leniency he had hoped for, and he died just months later while incarcerated. Perry faced a much harsher fate. He was convicted of second-degree murder, tampering with evidence, abuse of a corpse, theft, and conspiracy to commit murder, resulting in a 56-year prison sentence. He is currently incarcerated at the Morgan County Correctional Complex, where he assists fellow inmates with their legal appeals in the prison law library. He will be eligible for parole in 2038. Tragically, Janet's remains have never been found. Angel Ormston was born in 1975 in Mentor-on-the-Lake, a quiet suburb of Ohio, USA. This area has about 7,000 residents, and everyone knows each other. Children from local families often get along and grow up together. Life here is very simple and similar. The local high school serves as the main place of learning for most young people in town. Angel is a friendly and cheerful girl. She particularly enjoys walking around the area with her friends and often drives around with loud music. Local teenagers often gathered at a large shopping mall in a nearby, bigger city, which featured restaurants, a movie theater, and various stores. It made sense that Angel would find a part-time job there. In the summer of 1992, she started working at a fast food restaurant as she prepared for her senior year of high school. This job not only allowed her to earn some pocket money but also helped her save up for college. Her daily routine was consistent. She worked in the mornings and spent time with friends afterward. On the evening of July 31, 1992, 17-year-old Angel planned to go to her restaurant to pick up her paycheck and do some shopping. She promised her mother, Jackie, she would be home before the mall closed. Initially, her mother was not concerned and went to bed, assuming she was out with friends. The next morning, she woke up to find Angel missing from her room. Despite this, she didn't worry too much because it was common for her daughter to stay over at friends' houses, especially on weekends and holidays, so she pushed her uneasy thoughts aside. In this close-knit community, crime was rare, and young people often visited each other without worry. However, Angel, a high school student, didn't always keep her mother informed, which led to concerns. Her mother didn't want to restrict Angel too much, allowing her daughter considerable freedom that matched her independent spirit. Angel's upbringing was relaxed, her mother was adaptable and aimed to maintain a harmonious environment. Meanwhile, her father was often away as a long-distance truck driver. Despite the lack of strict rules or curfews in the Angel household, unsettling thoughts began to creep into Jackie's mind. Angel was missing all Saturday, and when her mother woke up on Sunday to find she still hadn't returned home, worries began to set in. She called families where Angel could stay, and her brother also went to the shopping center where she worked. Upon arriving at the parking lot, Angel's brother noticed her Honda Civic, which heightened his concern. He hoped to find Angel inside but instead found her purse, comb, and other personal items left on the driver's seat, indicating she might have vanished. He checked the burger joint where she worked but learned she hadn't shown up for a couple of days. Alarmed, he contacted Jackie, their mother, who hurried to the shopping center to retrieve Angel's car and uncover the truth while pushing aside her fears. Initially, she hoped it was just a series of coincidences. Angel often went out at night with her best friend, Stacy. That day, Stacy's family could not be reached, which gave Jackie some peace of mind. Nonetheless, anxiety grew as Jackie drove around the mall looking for Angel, but she found no trace of her daughter. Friends who did manage to contact her hadn't seen Angel since Friday. By 8 p.m., Jackie still couldn't reach Angel, deepening her worry. Jackie finally decided to report her daughter Angel as missing by going to the police. Although Angel was last seen on July 31st, Jackie did not visit the station until August 2nd. This delay raised suspicions among the police, but Jackie explained that she believed she needed to wait 48 hours before reporting someone missing. Jackie provided detailed information about Angel, including her life and relationships. Jackie asserted that, up until the very last moment, she was not worried that anything serious had happened to Angel. On the morning of Monday, August 2nd, Jackie managed to reach Stacy, who confirmed Jackie's fears. Stacy had spent the entire weekend at her sister's house and hadn't seen Angel. She was shocked to learn that her friend had been missing for over 2 days. Stacy tried to contact some mutual friends, but none had seen Angel. Following this, Jackie provided the police with new information, prompting them to initiate an active search for Angel. The police first examined Angel's car, which showed no signs of a struggle. The car was in normal condition, with no blood, signs of theft, or forced entry. The officers believed Angel may have left the car willingly. Given her age, they suggested she could have run away, but Jackie rejected this idea, citing their good relationship. Angel was not involved with banned substances and had always remained calm during her teenage years. Despite her independent nature, she was not the type to run away. In fact, she had been making future plans, including furthering her education at university. Detectives worked extensively to investigate Angel's disappearance. They suspected she might have been kidnapped from the car and collected many fingerprints at the scene. Although there were numerous prints, all belonged to family and close friends. Despite this, every individual had to be investigated to clear them as suspects since there were no other leads. The investigation began with Angel's father, a truck driver, but he was quickly ruled out because he had a verified alibi, he was in another state when his daughter went missing. Next, detectives looked into Angel's mother, Jackie. Her refusal to take a polygraph test raised significant suspicion and drew the attention of the investigators. They noted her delay in contacting the police and her decision to take Angel's car from the parking lot soon after learning about the disappearance, which further fueled suspicions. The police lacked the authority to compel her to take a polygraph test, and there was no direct evidence against her. As a result, the investigation continued with Jackie being the primary suspect. Jackie claimed that on the evening when Angel left home, she intended to go to a burger place. However, interviews with local staff revealed that Angel never arrived to pick up her paycheck that day. Investigators seized the opportunity to gather more information from Angel's colleagues. They quickly eliminated Jackie from the list of suspects due to Angel's good relationship with her family. However, they developed several other theories, including a suspicious connection to a former manager known for inappropriate behavior toward female employees. Investigators suspected that the former manager had been spying on female staff while they changed into their work uniforms. Later, he was fired for a harassment incident. Several female employees reported that this manager had touched them inappropriately. When the police investigated him, they discovered he had a criminal record for inappropriate behavior with minors, making him the main suspect. Other women also mentioned that he frequently focused on Angel, often looking for chances to be alone with her in the kitchen and making inappropriate comments. When this was discovered, the detectives were so focused on the case that they overlooked Jackie. The former manager was quickly located and interviewed, but he denied any involvement in Angel's disappearance. He said that she hasn't seen him since they worked together. He claimed that, on the day she went missing, he was far from his hometown and provided a timesheet showing that he was at another location of the fast food chain that day. Despite this evidence, detectives did not exclude him as a suspect and continued to question everyone at the restaurant, including both staff and management. Through their investigation, they uncovered a secret that Angel had kept from her family. She had been fired for consistently being late. While she was indeed heading to the restaurant to collect her final paycheck, this revelation did not provide any new leads regarding her disappearance. Gradually, all of Angel's co-workers were ruled out as suspects because they had alibis. Neither Angel's former manager nor her mother was considered a viable suspect in the case, making it difficult for the police to conduct their investigation. Communication with Angel's closest friends did not reveal any new information. Everyone was shocked at the idea that someone in her circle might wish her harm. She was gentle, trusting, and usually avoided conflict. However, her trusting nature made her vulnerable to someone who might manipulate her into a dangerous situation. After a long period without contact, fears grew that Angel had died. She hadn't reached out to anyone, appeared in public, or used any payment methods. Given these circumstances, the police decided to re-examine the people closest to her, as those responsible for such crimes are often found among acquaintances. The focus shifted to her best friend, Stacy. Although they had spoken to her briefly before, this time the interview lasted over 4 hours. From the start, Stacy expressed a strong willingness to help but firmly denied any involvement. She was cleared as a suspect when she provided a confirmed alibi. She had spent the entire weekend at her sister's house and they had been together the whole time, cooking side by side. The police are trying to ask Stacy if she knows about Angel's relationship with a man. Stacy revealed that Angel had recently become interested in a young man named Mark Sotka, a 19-year-old who had just graduated with honors from their high school. Stacy explained that Angel had been in love with Mark for a long time and even hoped to start a serious relationship with him. However, Angel was very private, especially about her relationships, and only Stacy knew about Mark, not even sharing it with her mother. During the questioning, Stacy reveals that Angel was aware of her pregnancy shortly before she disappeared. They had talked several times about the possibility of telling Mark about the baby, and Angel was optimistic that he would accept her and the child, viewing it as the start of their life together. Stacy was doubtful, but Angel was convinced she could build a family with Mark. The detectives decided to investigate Mark's background before confronting him. It appeared that Mark was not ready for fatherhood. Just before Angel went missing, he started college, which suggests he may have only considered Angel a short fling while planning to focus on his studies. They found no incriminating evidence against him, as he had a clean record and a solid reputation in school. Eventually, Mark was called to the police station for questioning. He was surprised to learn that he was considered a suspect in Angel's disappearance. He denied any involvement and refuted Stacy's claims about their relationship. When he learned that Angel might be pregnant, he laughed it off, dismissing it as a fabrication by his girlfriend. He admitted to having had a brief encounter with Angel at the beginning of summer but said they had not met again since then. Additionally, he had been in a relationship with another girl for 2 years. To support his claims, he needed to provide proof and a reliable alibi. Mark testified that he left work at 5 p.m. on July 31, 1992 to go to a shopping mall. He intended to buy a gift for his girlfriend and then meet friends at a pizzeria. The police began to investigate his account closely. His employment at a car dealership was verified through his timesheet, which matched his claimed working hours. Additionally, they found a receipt for the gift purchase. Several friends from work supported his story, confirming he was at the pizzeria until around 9 p.m. The only inconsistency was that some staff members at the places he visited that evening did not remember him. However, Mark willingly took a polygraph test, which showed no evidence of his involvement in any crime. As a result, he was cleared as a suspect. The investigation hit another dead end, prompting detectives to revisit earlier theories of escape or kidnapping. Discovering that Angel might have been pregnant reinforced these theories. Her family may have opposed her having a child at just 17, leading her to potentially run away to start a new life with the baby. Unfortunately, these possibilities did not bring them any closer to finding her. Frustrated by the lack of progress, Angel's mother decided to take action. She reached out to the community through local media in hopes of gathering information. Her appeal successfully raised awareness about Angel's disappearance, turning the incident into a well-known topic of discussion. Friends and concerned individuals joined in, distributing thousands of leaflets. Charities became involved, and a fund was established, raising $10,000 as a reward for anyone who could provide useful information for the investigation. In the following weeks, the police department received numerous requests for information, which opened several new leads for the investigation. Detectives conducted thorough checks, but these efforts did not yield any significant results. Frustrated, Angel's family made the decision to hire a private detective. When Angel's father returned from a trip, he was hopeful that it would help locate his daughter, unlike the ineffective efforts of the police. However, despite the detectives' hard work, no new information emerged. 3 months passed, and there were still no updates on Angel's case. By this time, her friends had almost lost hope, but her mother remained determined. Angel's mother, Jackie, even altered the message on their answering machine, leaving a note for her daughter in the hopes that she would eventually call. She refused to believe that anything bad had happened to Angel. Meanwhile, the entire city was critical of the police for their lack of progress, which led to increased pressure on law enforcement to revisit existing leads and suspects. Eventually, detectives began to focus on a man who was engaged to Angel's best friend. He was very interested in finding out what happened to her and was vocal in his criticism of the investigation. His name was Candle. Even though he showed a strong interest in Angel, he did not give any information to the detectives or the media. It was believed that he had attempted to start a relationship with Angel and was rejected, which might have led to her kidnapping or murder. On the day she went missing, he was working at a shoe store in the shopping mall where she was last seen. He had a confirmed alibi for that time, but after work, he could have committed a crime, especially since he was nearby. He allowed investigators to search his car, but nothing suspicious was found. The investigation had reached another dead end. On December 15, 1992, 4.5 months after Angel's disappearance, a local resident was out hunting with his dog. While walking through the forest, the dog became uneasy and led its owner away. This took them to a drainage ditch, where the hunter noticed something wrapped in a sheet and tied with a rope. Upon closer inspection, he saw a human hand protruding from the package. The man quickly contacted the police. When law enforcement arrived, they discovered a body in an advanced state of decomposition. Identification was possible only through dental records, which confirmed that it was 17-year-old Angel Ormston, who had been reported missing. On December 16th, Angel's family was informed of her death. An autopsy showed she had suffered blunt force trauma to the head, which might not have been fatal. However, she had sustained 2 stab wounds to the chest, both delivered with significant force, impacting her heart. As a result, she bled out quickly and died. Investigating her death was complicated by decomposition, but fibers resembling those from a blue carpet were found at the scene. The police compiled a list of all homes associated with Angel, including those of neighbors, family, and friends, in search of a home that might have green carpeting. One key location of interest was the house belonging to Mark, who might have been the father of Angel's unborn child. At the time of the murder, the house was empty as it was for sale. Witnesses claimed they saw Mark enter the house with a girl who matched Angel's description. Although the house had been sold by then, the new owners allowed detectives to inspect it. Most rooms had been renovated, except for the basement. Upon entering the basement, the police found a blue carpet that matched the fibers collected from the scene. Additionally, a clothesline similar to the one used by the killer to move the body was discovered in the laundry room, matching the one found on Angel. The new owners reported that both the carpet and the clothesline had been left behind by the previous owners. These items were sent for forensic analysis, and tests confirmed that the microscopic fibers and the rope matched those used in the crime. Furthermore, a bloody fingerprint was discovered in the basement. 5 months after Angel disappeared, on December 31, 1992, 19-year-old Mark Sotka was arrested on suspicion of murder. During his arrest, he insisted that the police had no evidence against him and claimed he was not the person they were looking for. He immediately refused to cooperate with detectives, prompting forensic experts to conduct a detailed examination of his car. They discovered that although he had attempted to clean the interior, a few small drops of blood remained. During questioning, Mark eventually broke down due to the overwhelming evidence against him. He admitted to committing an act he described as stupid. When pressed for more details, he confessed to murdering Angel. Mark explains that he invited Angel to his house for intimate relations again, but things changed that night when she revealed that she was pregnant and that he was the father. This news triggered a violent outburst from him. He demanded that she get an abortion, but she refused. An argument ensued, during which Angel threatened to cause problems. In a fit of rage, Mark struck her several times in the face. Angel fell in the garage, and Mark, grabbing a knife, returned to the basement and stabbed her twice in the chest. Afterward, he calmly met with his friends at a pizzeria, chatting and laughing as if nothing had happened. Later that evening, he wrapped her body in a sheet, secured it with a clothesline, and transported it in the trunk of his car to a wooded area, where he left it in a ditch. Afterward, Mark returned home, covered up the evidence of the crime, and cleaned his car. After 5 months of investigation, he was arrested as the killer. During questioning, Mark confessed to first-degree murder and led authorities to the location where he disposed of the knife used in the crime. Despite thorough searches, the knife was never found. However, he had limited chances of proving his innocence. The motive for the attack stemmed from Angel's pregnancy, which disrupted his future plans. Mark had no intention of continuing his relationship with her and wanted to focus on someone else. In February 1993, to avoid the death penalty that was in place at the time, Mark officially admitted his guilt. Consequently, he was sentenced to life in prison but became eligible for parole after 30 years. Angel's family pointed out that Mark showed no remorse or compassion, which explained how he was able to deceive the polygraph test. Following his sentencing, he was taken to jail. After serving 20 years, Mark utilized an old Ohio law that allowed him to request a parole hearing after 2/3 of his minimum sentence. His family was informed, and Angel's relatives increased their efforts to prevent him from being released. Their efforts were successful, and he was denied parole in July 2023. After serving 30 years, Mark appeared before the parole board again, but this time, Angel's family opposed his release once again. As a result, he remains in prison. Angel's family expressed their relief to the media, calling it a significant victory for them. Her mother stated that their family would continue to fight to keep the killer incarcerated and would never forgive Mark, who has never expressed remorse or sought forgiveness for taking Angel's life and the life of her baby. On the evening of May 28, 2023, 29-year-old Julia Tramontano vanished without a trace. 7 months pregnant, she stopped responding to calls and messages from loved ones. The first person to report her disappearance was the man she lived with, Alexander Impagnatiello. He insisted that when he returned home from work, he found the apartment empty and had no idea where his partner could have gone. From the very beginning, there were too many unusual details in this case. Julia had left behind most of her personal belongings, and her plans for the near future gave no indication that she intended to disappear. As investigators began piecing together her last known activities, they uncovered even more troubling facts. The night before she went missing, Julia had sent messages to her mother, Loredana Femiano, and a close friend, revealing that she had had a serious argument with Alexander. She was deeply upset and wrote that the situation was causing her a great deal of distress. But the most important question remained unanswered: what really happened that fateful evening? If Julia had truly left the house on her own, why had no one seen her since? In the days that followed, investigators would begin unraveling a web of deception that would lead to a grim truth. Julia was born on May 2, 1994, in a small town in the province of Naples. She grew up in a close-knit family where support and warmth were always present. Her parents encouraged independence and self-confidence from an early age. While they embraced modern views, family traditions remained a cornerstone of their lives, and home was always a place she could return to for guidance, comfort. Julia attended a local school, excelling in the humanities. She was drawn to real estate, fascinated by architecture, investment opportunities, and the idea of becoming a successful real estate agent. After high school, she pursued a degree in the field, quickly mastering the profession thanks to her analytical mindset and strong communication skills. By the age of 25, she had built a solid reputation in the industry, but for Julia, this wasn't enough. She dreamed of life in a big city filled with opportunities. By the time she turned 26, her career in her hometown had reached a plateau. Working at a real estate agency, she realized the local market had its limitations. Inspired by her friends' stories, she decided to move to Senego, a suburb of Milan, where she believed would offer her a new chapter filled with potential. By the end of 2018, her decision was final. Senego symbolized independence, new connections, and the career growth she longed for. The transition happened quickly. Packing her belongings and saying goodbye to her loved ones, she set off for the city that she hoped would become her new home. After moving to Senego, Julia immediately immersed herself in work. The city's real estate market was fast-paced, competitive, required confidence and persistence. She adapted quickly, building connections, attending networking events, and closing deals. Her new life was exciting, but amid her busy schedule, she found herself longing for something more: personal happiness. It was during this time that she met Alexander. Their paths crossed at a Milan bar where her colleagues had invited her to celebrate a successful deal. Alexander worked as a bartender at a high-end lounge inside a 5-star hotel. A year older than Julia, he was charming, outgoing, and had a natural ability to connect with people. His confidence and charisma drew her in. With him, she felt like she could relax, momentarily escape the pressures of work, and simply enjoy the present. The first few weeks of their relationship felt effortless. They spent evenings dining at restaurants, strolling through the city at night, and talking about the future. Alexander shared that he had a son from a previous relationship but assured her that his past was behind him and that he was now looking for stability. Julia sincerely hoped that her move to Senego would bring not only career growth but also personal fulfillment. She was convinced that Alexander was the person she was meant to build a future with. Julia believed she had finally met someone with whom she could build a lasting relationship. Their romance moved quickly, and within a few months, they decided to move in together. She had no idea what secrets he was hiding or how much her decision would change the course of her life. Tensions in Julia's relationship with Alexander were growing. She felt that something was wrong, but she couldn't pinpoint the issue. As time went on, the discomfort increased, while Alexander continued to act as if everything was normal. By the end of 2022, Julia noticed changes in her body, constant fatigue, strange cravings, and a missed period led her to suspect that something was different. Not wanting to wait any longer, she bought a pregnancy test. She then realized she was pregnant. This news brought mixed feelings. She had always wanted a family, but the past few months with Alexander had been challenging. Nonetheless, she knew she needed to tell him in person. Nervously, Julia chose the right moment to share the news. She had thought about various possible reactions: surprise, joy, maybe even fear, but Alexander's expression was unreadable. After a few seconds of silence, he finally asked one question: "Are you sure?" Julia felt the chilling distance in his demeanor. He showed no curiosity and asked no questions about how far along she was or how she was feeling. His indifference was impossible to ignore. In the days that followed, he never brought up the topic again. No discussions about the future, no interest in upcoming doctor's visits. Julia felt abandoned but held on to hope that in time he would come to terms with the situation. The new year began, but Alexander's attitude remained unchanged. More and more, Julia found herself spending evenings alone, contemplating her future. She kept working, trying to focus on other things, but an uneasy feeling grew inside her. Meanwhile, Alexander's double life took an unexpected turn. In early 2023, he learned that his other partner, Allegra Syria, was also expecting. The news caught him completely off guard. Just like Julia, Allegra had no idea that another woman was in her life. She truly believed she and Alexander were in a committed relationship. Unlike Julia, however, Allegra was unsure whether she wanted to continue the pregnancy. Alexander convinced Allegra that having a child wasn't the right decision at that moment. He assured her that he would support whatever choice she made, but strongly implied that ending the pregnancy would be for the best. Allegra hesitated for a long time but eventually agreed. Alexander accompanied her to the medical procedure, ensuring that this chapter was closed. He hoped that with Allegra's pregnancy no longer an issue, he could now focus on dealing with what he saw as his bigger problem: Julia's decision to have the baby. Unlike Allegra, Julia was determined to continue her pregnancy. Despite his emotional distance, Alexander repeatedly tried to persuade her to reconsider, but Julia refused to change her mind. For her, this was a conscious and personal decision. She knew that her relationship with Alexander was falling apart, but she was prepared to raise the baby on her own. What she didn't realize was that this choice would become a turning point in her life. After Julia refused to terminate the pregnancy, Alexander realized he was losing control of the situation. Her firm decision disrupted his plans and forced him to look for another way to free himself from what he saw as a problem. He had begun systematically researching poisons. He scoured the internet for methods to cause harm without raising suspicion, analyzing which substances were both effective and difficult to detect. His research covered chemical compounds found in household products, plant-based toxins, and even highly dangerous substances like cyanide. However, most of the options he found were either too difficult to obtain or left clear traces in the body. Eventually, he settled on rodenticides, products designed to eliminate rodents. These were widely available over the counter and wouldn't raise any red flags. He also found information suggesting that certain types worked slowly, causing internal bleeding, weakness, and anemia symptoms that could easily be mistaken for pregnancy complications. After, Alexander began putting his plan into action. He started adding small amounts of the toxic substance to Julia's food and drinks, hoping that her health would gradually decline. Within weeks, she began experiencing unusual symptoms: constant exhaustion, dizziness, nausea, and sharp abdominal pain. Julia confided in her friends about how unwell she felt but assumed it was just part of the pregnancy. She had no idea that something much more sinister was happening. Alexander closely monitored her condition, expecting the effects to intensify, but the poison wasn't working as quickly as he had hoped. Frustrated, he continued to try increasing its dosage, but the results were still disappointing. Julia still felt sick, but her body was fighting back, and the pregnancy was progressing. This infuriated Alexander. His original plan had failed, and now he was forced to consider another way out. Alexander was accustomed to being in control of situations. He skillfully crafted his lies, knowing exactly what to say to persuade each woman to accept his version of reality. Julia thought he was merely going through a tough time and believed he would eventually come to terms with the pregnancy. Allegra, meanwhile, was convinced that his past relationship had ended long ago. But one misstep shattered his carefully maintained facade. The first sign of trouble for Allegra was how uncomfortable Alexander became whenever his past was mentioned. He avoided talking about his life before they met, never shared his social media accounts, and didn't mention his ex. Initially, this didn't seem suspicious, but over time, the inconsistencies began to accumulate. The turning point occurred when she accidentally discovered recent photos on his phone, images of him with Julia. Their expressions and body language indicated that their relationship was still very much alive. Allegra didn't want to leap to conclusions, so she started observing him more closely and taking mental notes. He frequently left in the evenings, saying he was working late, but his co-workers at the hotel disclosed that he had actually clocked out early. At times, he wouldn't answer his phone, only to later offer excuses that didn't quite make sense. When Allegra confronted Alexander about the photos, he responded immediately. He accused Julia of being unable to accept their breakup and spreading the pictures to make him feel guilty. Allegra wanted to trust his explanation, but it felt off to her. As she asked more questions, Alexander's answers became less convincing. Realizing he was losing control, he quickly changed his story. He claimed that Julia not only refused to move on but had also faked her pregnancy to try to keep him. In a last-ditch effort to support his lie, Alexander even created a fake DNA test. He modified a file he found online and presented it as evidence that he was not the child's father. Although Allegra initially believed him, her doubts persisted. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story than she knew. A few days later, Allegra decided to investigate for herself. While Alexander was sleeping, she took his phone, found Julia's number, and sent her a message. Julia replied almost immediately, and her tone wasn't one of revenge, rather, she was also seeking answers. The next day, Allegra proposed they meet in person. Both women realized that this conversation had the potential to change everything. On May 27, 2023, they agreed to meet at Armani Hotel where Allegra worked, feeling a mix of tension and determination. Allegra was still unaware of the full extent of Alexander's betrayal, while Julia was shocked to learn that the man she had envisioned a future with was living a double life. Their meeting began cautiously. Allegra spoke first, revealing what she had uncovered. She explained how Alexander had convinced her that his past relationship was completely over, and she mentioned the supposed DNA test that indicated the baby wasn't his. Julia listened intently. Once Allegra finished, Julia calmly clarified that the test was fake. She had never asked for a test, and the timeline of her pregnancy corresponded perfectly with their relationship. More importantly, she disclosed that she and Alexander were still living together, and he had never given her any indication that their relationship was ending. As the minutes passed, Allegra began to see the reality of the situation. She realized she had been deceived from the beginning. Her entire view of their relationship changed, and for the first time, she felt certain about the truth. Although she was hurt and disappointed, she held no resentment toward Julia. It became painfully clear that both women had fallen victim to the same web of lies. Their conversation lasted more than an hour as them shared details, gradually uncovering the full extent of Alexander's deceit. Eventually, they moved from seeing each other as rivals to feeling connected. In that moment, Julia made a decisive choice. She was finished with Alexander. Her future was for herself and her child. Alexander had no role in it now. Upon returning home, Julia confronted Alexander right away, revealing that she knew everything and that their relationship was over. He initially denied everything and then became defensive, accusing her of intruding into his private matters. However, Julia disregarded his excuses, firmly stated that she was leaving for Naples and didn't want any further contact with him. That evening, she texted her mother and sister to explain her decision. They fully supported her and offered assistance in any way they could. Julia reassured them, saying she needed to handle a few things in Milan first but would be home in a few days. After their conversation, Alexander realized he had lost control. Everything he had concealed was now revealed. Julia knew the truth about his double life, his lies, and his manipulation. She no longer trusted him or listened to his words. She had made a firm decision to leave him. That day, the tension between them reached. Julia ignored all of Alexander's attempts to engage her. She focused solely on packing her belongings, showing no emotion. Her silence only intensified his frustration. Alexander pleaded with her, insisting she was making a mistake, declaring his love, and urging her to reconsider, but Julia remained silent. His anger escalated as he raised his voice in desperation, seeking any reaction from her. When he realized she had made up her mind, a wave of uncontrollable rage consumed him. In a moment of blind fury, he grabbed a knife from the counter and attacked. Julia had no opportunity to defend herself. The assault was swift and precise. But for Alexander, it was not enough to stop there. Driven by panic and fear of being exposed, he continued his assault, losing all sense of restraint. Realizing he needed to eliminate the evidence, he dragged her to the bathroom. He poured alcohol over her and set her on fire, hoping the flames would destroy any evidence. However, the fire only caused burns and did not fully consume. Frantically, he grabbed rags, cleaning supplies, scrubbing the blood from the floor, walls, and furniture. Despite his efforts, the stains persisted. The apartment still resembled a crime scene. He understood that he couldn't completely erase what had happened, but he believed he could find a way to avoid being held responsible. Having failed to destroy the evidence through fire, he needed a new strategy. His first step was to stage her disappearance, making it seem like Julia had left on her own. He took her phone, began messaging her family and friends. Knowing they would be concerned if she suddenly went missing, he crafted messages to imply she had chosen to leave. He sent a brief, vague text to her mother, stating that she needed some time alone. Then, he messaged one of her friends, claiming that she had left but wasn't ready to discuss her whereabouts. He intended to buy himself some time to make it appear that Julia had simply vanished. However, his plan didn't stop there. He was aware that someone would eventually alert the authorities, so, on May 28, 2023, he went to the police and reported Julia missing. He claimed that they had an argument and she left the house, never to return. His story was straightforward. That morning he had gone to work, and when he came back, she was gone. He's saying that her personal belongings, including her passport and money, were missing, implying she had left town voluntarily. Investigators paid close attention, but right from the beginning, something felt off. His behavior raised suspicion. He spoke too confidently, almost as if he already knew what questions the officers would ask. In contrast to Julia's family and friends, who were frantic, desperate for information, he remained unsettlingly calm. While the police organized a search, Alexander concentrated on concealing the evidence. He wrapped the body in a plastic bag and moved them to the garage. Over the next few days, he relocated the body several times, first hiding them in the basement of their building, then bringing them back to the garage. He was trying to find a way to get rid of them for good, but the longer he waited, the more mistakes he made. Investigators started examining his statements closely, interviewing neighbors, and searching for inconsistencies. He thought he was still in control, but law enforcement was closing in. After Alexander reported Julia missing, the police followed their standard procedures for such cases. The first significant clue came when forensic specialists found traces of blood in his car. Despite his attempts to clean it, modern technology allowed investigators to identify the biological evidence, which was confirmed to belong to Julia. The second piece of evidence was uncovered in the common areas of their apartment building. Faint reddish stains on the stairs and in the hallway initially appeared to be dust or spilled liquid. However, chemical testing revealed they were traces of partially cleaned blood. Investigators noted Alexander's strange behavior. Unlike most people whose loved ones disappear, he showed little genuine concern. He did not reach out to Julia's family for help in finding her, nor did he actively participate in spreading information about her disappearance. He only completed the formal steps to report her missing, which raised further suspicions. A major breakthrough in the case occurred when detectives analyzed his electronic devices. They confiscated his phone, computer, and tablet, revealing alarming findings. First, they discovered a search history that dated back several months before the crime. He had been researching poisons, learning about the effects of various toxins, and reading articles on how to discreetly harm someone. Some searches even questioned why certain toxic substances might fail to work. Another crucial piece of evidence was the forged DNA test he had shown Algra. Forensic analysis confirmed that the document had been tampered with and that it was downloaded from a website that allowed users to edit medical records. As more evidence accumulated, Alexander's story began to unravel. Investigators increased their pressure, systematically highlighting inconsistencies in his account. Initially, he maintained his innocence, claiming he knew nothing about it. However, with each interrogation, the police presented undeniable facts. They showed him photographs of blood stains, confronted him with his search history. They brought in witnesses who reported hearing loud noises and shouting from Alexander's apartment. A significant breakthrough in the investigation happened when authorities examined Alexander's actions after Julia went missing. Surveillance cameras showed him making several trips to the garage, where he carried plastic bags inside and later came out empty-handed. Eventually, he confessed and revealed where he had hidden her body. On June 1, 2023, police found Julia's remains in a dense area near Sago. Forensic examination indicated that someone had tried to burn the body, but the attempt was not completed. Despite his efforts to conceal the truth, experts were able to determine how she died and gather conclusive evidence linking him to the crime. The tragic death of Giulia Tramontano shocked people all over Italy, a country where gender-based violence is a serious issue. After Alexander was arrested, protests began nationwide. Women filled the streets, carrying signs and demanding stricter punishments for domestic violence. Memorial marches took place in cities like Milan, Naples, and Rome, calling for systemic changes to better protect vulnerable individuals. At one rally, Giulia's sister, Chiara Tramontano, urged lawmakers to take action against the increasing number of cases where offenders face no significant consequences until it is too late. Forensic experts and investigators focused on understanding the psychological profile of Alexander. A psychological evaluation revealed troubling behavioral traits. Court-appointed psychiatrists determined that he exhibited strong narcissistic tendencies, showing no remorse for his actions. His behavior during interrogations and court appearances demonstrated a profound self-centeredness, an utter lack of empathy. He viewed others only in terms of how they could serve his interests, ignoring their feelings. His actions were motivated solely by a need to protect his reputation and keep control over those around him. Any perceived loss of power triggered a quick and dangerous reaction. During the trial, Alexander tried to appear remorseful, but neither Giulia's family nor the public found his words convincing. He claimed to be baffled about how he could commit such a horrific act, asserting it was a moment of impulsive rage that he didn't fully recognize. However, prosecutors presented compelling evidence: his online searches for poisons, the attempted poisoning, the falsified DNA test, and the false report he filed with the police. Each piece of evidence demonstrated that the crime was premeditated. After Alexander's arrest, Algra decided to help the authorities. She provided them with her messages with him, revealing that he had lied to both her and Giulia. During the trial, Algra also testified about the fake DNA test and his many attempts to manipulate her. As a witness, she was called by prosecutors to confirm important details, including how Alexander concealed his double life, lied about Giulia's pregnancy, and made excuses when the truth began to emerge. She realized that if she hadn't stumbled upon those photos on his phone, the truth could have remained hidden for much longer. During her testimony, she expressed the guilt she felt toward Giulia, even though she too had been a victim of his lies. After the trial, Algra chose not to speak to journalists, stayed out of the public eye, and tried to create some distance from the tragedy. Reports suggest that she later left Milan for another city, hoping to rebuild her life. The court found Alexander Impagnatiel guilty of first-degree murder, highlighting aggravating factors such as the cruelty of the crime, the ongoing emotional abuse inflicted on the victim, and his intentional efforts to destroy evidence. He was sentenced to life in prison. In the judge's closing remarks, it was stated that such crimes cannot be justified as mere lapses in control or temporary emotional turmoil. Alexander's actions over several months showed a clear and deliberate intention to eliminate Julia. Julia's case serves as a tragic reminder of the risks posed by individuals who view their partners as possessions. It raised awareness and contributed to a larger movement aimed at protecting those who are still in danger. Julia Tramontano's radiant spirit, marked by her ambition, warmth, and unwavering resolve, continues to resonate far beyond the tragedy that claimed her life. Her courage in the face of betrayal and her dreams for her unborn child remain a powerful testament to the strength of the human heart. Through the tireless advocacy of her mother, Loredana Femiano, and sister, Chiara Tramontano, Julia's legacy fuels a growing movement to combat gender-based violence, inspiring communities to stand united for justice and protection. In every heart she touched, Julia's light shines on, a beacon of hope and a call to build a world where no one suffers in silence. Ana Knežević, a U.S. citizen, had moved to Madrid after 13 years of marriage to take some time for herself and start anew. While in Madrid, she was involved in finalizing her divorce, making future plans, and keeping in touch with her family and friends. On February 2nd, Ana made her last known phone call. The very next day, messages began arriving from her phone, raising immediate concerns. One of her close friends quickly noticed that the texts did not sound like Ana. Ana was born in 1983 in Colombia to a family that valued traditional Balkan customs. Her upbringing emphasized the importance of family, discipline, and education. Growing up, she was known for her neatness, organizational abilities, and independence, traits that remained with her throughout her life. Later, Ana moved to the United States, became a U.S. citizen. Living in here opened up new career and personal growth opportunities for her. She became fluent in English, honed her professional skills, gradually became a part of her local community. Ana always prioritized education, self-improvement. She choosing to live a quiet and unassuming life away from the public eye. In the early 2000s, Ana met David Knežević in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Their relationship progressed quickly. They then moved in together and got married. As their personal relationship grew, they became business partners as well, founding a company focused on tech support and IT solutions. David took care of the technical aspects of the business, while Ana managed organization and long-term strategy. Eventually, they began investing in real estate, acquiring properties throughout Florida. From the outside, their life together seemed stable. They had a thriving business, a home, and a comfortable lifestyle, giving the impression of a couple on the path to financial independence. However, underlying issues were developing. Friends and acquaintances were largely unaware of the growing problems in their marriage. Over time, serious conflicts arose, including financial disagreements and deeper personal issues. By 2023, Ana and David's marriage had deteriorated to a breaking point. Those close to them reported they were in the midst of a separation, with asset division becoming the main focus. This included both their tech business and several real estate properties. Although they had not yet finalized the divorce, both were already preparing for it. Negotiations had started, disagreements emerged, and tensions were rising. With the conflict escalating, Ana chose to temporarily leave the U.S. In December 2023, she moved to Madrid, renting an apartment in the upscale Salamanca neighborhood. She explained that this move was essential for distancing herself from the stress, gaining clarity, and closing a chapter in her life. She repeatedly stated that she wasn't seeking a new relationship or distractions. Her goal was simply to regain her balance. After settling in Spain, Ana made her new place feel like home, began therapy, maintained close contact with friends, and started planning short trips across Europe. Her time in Madrid wasn't an escape, it was a way to step back from the overwhelming conflict she faced in Florida. However, just a few weeks into this new life, an unexpected event brought her independent journey to a sudden and troubling end. After moving to Madrid, Ana maintained a close friendship with her longtime friend, Sana Remo, who was living in Florida. They talked every day, despite the time difference. Their friendship had a strong foundation, and they often traveled together. Ana trusted Sana completely, often sharing her thoughts, feelings, and daily experiences with her. Their text messages showed that Ana was open about her adjustment to life in Spain. In mid-January 2024, the two friends traveled to Austria together. After their trip, they made plans to meet again in Madrid, with Sana set to arrive on February 8th. Before that, Ana had arranged a short trip to Barcelona with another friend on February 5th. They had already booked their tickets for the trip, which was not just a vacation but also included attending a conference. Ana had discussed their plans and was excited about the upcoming journey. On the evening of February 2nd, Ana had a phone call with Sana around 8:30 p.m. local time. They spoke for over an hour. Ana mentioned that she planned to stay in that night and had no plans to go out. She appeared calm and talked about her day, sharing details about errands and household chores. Their conversation ended around 10 p.m., which is the last confirmed time anyone had contact with Ana. The next morning, February 3rd, Sana received a text from Ana's number. It said, "I met an amazing man. He has a summer house about 2 hours from Madrid. We're heading there. The signal might be weak. I'll call you when I return." Soon after, another message arrived. "After my therapy session yesterday, I took a walk. He approached me on the street, and we instantly connected. I've never felt like this before." Sana felt something was off about the messages. She knew Ana well. She was cautious and would never leave town with a stranger without informing someone. Sana responded immediately, but there were no further replies. Her calls also went unanswered. At first, she tried to convince herself that Ana might indeed be in a place with poor reception. However, her concern quickly escalated into alarm. That same day, another friend of Ana's received similar messages. The text felt strange. The wording was flat and lacked Ana's usual style. What struck her as odd was the dialect, which sounded very different from Ana's typical speech. They mentioned that the text seemed like it had been translated from another language using an automatic translator. The theory was logical. The message sounded awkward and overly formal, which made him uncomfortable. Both Sana and Ana's friend quickly figured out that Ana hadn't written those messages herself. They compared them to their previous conversations and immediately noticed the difference. Ana's actual texts were vibrant and filled with her distinctive expressions, none of which were present in these messages. Furthermore, the content of the messages didn't match her recent actions at all. The next day, Sana did everything she could to contact Ana. She reached out to their mutual friends, tried tracking her location using apps, and even called local hospitals. However, nothing worked. Although Ana's phone was on, she did not answer. After, Sana quickly contacted the Madrid police. She explained that Ana's sudden silence was very unusual and that the messages had a tone that Ana wouldn't normally use. However, the authorities did not act right away. They viewed Ana as an adult who had the right to make her own choices, including leaving town without notifying anyone. Officially, her disappearance was not deemed suspicious. Police stated they could not start an investigation without evidence that Ana was missing against her will. They believed the unusual texts and her lack of communication were insufficient. The only definitive point they recognized was February 5th, the day Ana was supposed to travel to Barcelona. Authorities indicated that if she did not arrive at the station or reach out by that date, her absence would be considered a formal missing persons case. As a result, no significant actions were taken for 3 days after Ana stopped responding. The police did not check her phone records, search her apartment, or look into her recent activities. After Ana went missing, her friends tried hard to find her. They called and texted her repeatedly and even contacted people in Madrid, but nothing worked. On February 5th, Anna was supposed to be at the train station but didn't show up, and none of her phones were answering. It was only then that authorities officially declared her a missing person. That same day, a request was made to the court for permission to search her apartment and access her phone records. However, the request was denied by a judge due to a lack of evidence suggesting any crime had occurred. There were no signs of forced entry, loud noises, or aggressive behavior. Therefore, there was no legal basis for allowing a search or accessing her private information. Days later, when law enforcement entered Anna's apartment, they found that the door was locked from the outside. Inside, everything looked untouched. Her belongings were in order, there were no signs of a struggle, and nothing valuable was missing. However, the fact that her home was undisturbed raised serious concerns about her disappearance. It indicated that she might have either left voluntarily and never returned or that someone took her out without breaking in. Anna's brother, Felipe Anal, kept in close contact with Spanish authorities but pointed out that coordinating internationally was difficult. He shared with reporters that the investigators in Madrid had limited English proficiency and that U.S. officials had not yet provided significant assistance. He expressed worry about the lack of communication among Spanish police, the FBI, and the U.S. consulate. Despite the disappearance of a U.S. citizen under mysterious circumstances abroad, the initial days following Anna's vanishing were poorly managed. This was a critical time when they could have gathered fresh evidence, interviewed neighbors, and reviewed phone activity or camera footage. Instead, valuable time was wasted, assuming Anna left on her own. This assumption delayed a prompt response and may have impacted the investigation's course. On the 4 days later after Anna Knežević disappeared, staff at her apartment complex provided police with crucial information that changed the investigation. This information was about the night of February 2nd, which was the last time Anna had been in contact. A building administrator reported that several surveillance cameras at the entrance and along the building's facade had been disabled around 9:30 p.m., just 30 minutes before Anna stopped responding to her friend. When security personnel reviewed the recordings, they noticed that the camera lenses had been intentionally covered. The footage showed a person in dark clothing and a motorcycle helmet approaching the outdoor cameras. He spraying paint directly onto the lenses to obscure them. Afterward, he waited for someone to exit the building, which allowed him to slip inside. Once inside, he targeted the camera in the elevator area, spraying paint over its lens as well. This act appeared to be deliberate. The individual seemed to know where the surveillance devices were and how to disable them quickly, discreetly. The building staff confirmed that the security systems had been tampered with. They provided copies of the footage to Spanish investigators, which was the first visual evidence indicating possible outside interference. However, identifying the person in the video was impossible due to his helmet and dark clothing. The individual's face was completely covered, and their body type did not offer enough clues for clear identification. Nevertheless, forensic experts noted a few important details. The person's eyes, part of their forehead, and brow line were briefly visible. Investigators believe that this person planned the act meticulously. He brought spray paint and wore equipment intended to prevent leaving any traces behind. His appearance in the footage matched the timeline of Anna's disappearance, raising further suspicions. The targeting of the building's surveillance system and the disabling of specific cameras indicated that the individual was familiar with the layout of the premises, suggesting this was not a random act. It was planned and concerning. Further investigation showed that the exterior camera was spray painted in about 30 seconds, and the interior camera was disabled even more quickly. Every action taken was intentional and confident, with no sign of hesitation or looking around. This led investigators to conclude that the individual knew how long the actions would take and executed them with precision. A staff member confirmed that this man appeared on camera just as residents were leaving. He seized the opportunity to enter the building, indicating that he did not have authorized access. Without a key card or entry code, he was not recognized as a resident. He took a direct route from the entrance to the camera near the elevator, with no stops. The video footage quickly caught the attention of both law enforcement and Anna's friends. Sana, who had reached Madrid by that time, shared the video with journalists, which sparked public interest in the case. Media outlets began to speculate that the man in the helmet might be linked to Anna's disappearance, but his identity and motives remained unknown. After an image from the surveillance footage was made public, the FBI started its own analysis. They noted that even low-resolution footage could be analyzed to compare visual elements with their databases. They concentrated on key facial features that were still visible despite the helmet, such as the shape of the eyes, the space between the eyebrows, the brow ridges, and the upper facial structure. These aspects can often be recognized even when partially hidden. Public curiosity about the footage intensified when it was revealed that the paint used to disable the cameras was from a specific brand, which later appeared in other parts of the investigation. Investigators did not release this detail right away, but they found that the spray can involve match the type and packaging shown in a store surveillance footage. This footage captured a man who looked similar to someone seen at Anna's building buying the same spray can. After Anna stopped answering calls and messages, her friend Sana reached out to her husband, David Nezovich, on February 4th. During their conversation, Sana learned that David was in Florida. She proposed that they travel to Madrid together to help search for Anna, and David agreed, even discussing a specific flight from Miami for the next day. However, when the time arrived, he did not show up and later claimed to be in Serbia. This unexpected turn left Anna's friends confused. David was aware that his wife had gone missing under mysterious circumstances in a foreign country. He had the ability to fly to Spain, yet he chose to go to Serbia instead. This decision was puzzling. Instead of participating in the search, he went to a third country where his relatives live. Questions naturally arose. Why didn't he go to the location where his wife disappeared? Why didn't he join the search effort? Sana grew increasingly concerned about David's behavior. While he did not openly dismiss her, his reactions felt distant and confusing. His actions seemed illogical. Although the first few days were critical, he did not attempt to go to Madrid. He believed there was nothing he could do in Spain because he did not speak Spanish, had no place to stay, and was unfamiliar with the city. His lawyer supported this view, explaining to reporters that going to a country without any local connections would not be useful. He also mentioned that David was worried about Anna's disappearance but felt that being there in person would not make a difference. After Anna went missing, David hired a lawyer in Florida. The lawyer reported that David had been in contact with the FBI and had shared all necessary information, including credit card statements and his efforts to find legal assistance in Spain. However, none of these actions involved him participating in the search directly. Despite providing some information, David stayed distant and avoided making any public comments. After Florida police confirmed that David reported a theft in January, several questions emerged. He alleged that $5,000 in cash and personal items were stolen from his unlocked car. In the morning, he found the passenger door slightly open. Security cameras near his home did not capture the theft, and the police could not identify any suspects. Although there was no initial connection to Anna's case, the report became suspicious in light of subsequent events. David's trip to Serbia created further controversy. He asserted that he left the U.S. before Anna's disappearance and remained abroad during that time. However, Saw mentioned a phone call with him on February 4th, in which he stated he was in Florida, suggesting he might have flown to Serbia after that conversation. There was no official confirmation from border control authorities at that time. David's attorney provided his passport as evidence that he had left earlier, but these inconsistencies raised doubts and increased suspicion regarding his involvement. The situation became more complicated due to a property dispute that had intensified months before Anna disappeared. With shared assets about to be divided, suspicion was understandable. This divorce was not just ordinary, it involved significant financial stakes and joint possessions. Anna's friends noted that their relationship had turned hostile. In contrast, David and his lawyer claimed the divorce was amicable, arguing that they had simply grown apart. At that time, David had not been charged with any crime and was located outside the U.S. However, his absence during the search for Anna and inconsistencies in his statements raised concerns among investigators. While David insisted he had no involvement in Anna's disappearance, a growing list of circumstantial evidence caught the attention of both police and the FBI. In May 2024, U.S. authorities arrested David at Miami International Airport just after he arrived on an international flight. He was taken into custody by the Diplomatic Security Service and the FBI without any issues. This was the first official action that connected him to Anna's disappearance. He faced charges related to the abduction of a U.S. citizen outside the country, based on a series of indirect but related pieces of evidence uncovered during a multinational investigation. One of the key pieces of evidence was surveillance footage collected by investigators in Spain and Serbia. At a store close to Anna's apartment in Madrid, cameras captured a man who looked like David buying a can of spray paint and duct tape. Forensic analysis showed that the spray paint was the same brand used to disable the security cameras in Anna's building, as the label and color were identical. Investigators viewed this as evidence of premeditation. Additionally, authorities tracked a rental car used by David in Serbia. GPS data indicated that the car entered Spain, traveled through Madrid, and then moved into northern Italy before returning to Serbia. The precise tracking of this route led investigators to believe that Anna's body may have been transported in that vehicle. A stop in a wooded area of northern Italy raised particular interest, prompting coordinated searches by both Italian and Spanish law enforcement. As of that time, no remains had been discovered, but the theory that Anna's body was transported remained a central focus of the investigation. A key piece of evidence came from surveillance footage in Anna's apartment building. Investigators released a video showing a man, matching David's physical description, exiting the elevator with a large suitcase on the same night Anna disappeared. Though his face was obscured, the timing and situation aligned with other findings in the investigation. Authorities suspected that the suitcase might have been used to remove Anna's body from the apartment. David's rental car, which he had picked up in Serbia, was eventually returned to the rental agency. An inspection revealed that the car's mileage had increased by over 4,800 miles. Additionally, it had been modified with tinted windows, which were not part of the original rental terms. These changes raised suspicions. Investigators also found that the car was operating with false license plates during a time it was believed to have been used for cross-border travel. Spanish police recorded a sighting of a similar vehicle near the location where Anna disappeared, but they could not identify the driver because of the tinted windows and fake plates. The FBI linked several crucial pieces of evidence: the purchase of materials, disruptions to surveillance systems, the travel route, elevator footage showing a suitcase, and modifications to a car. Their report indicated that all the evidence suggested a planned criminal act and an effort to conceal it. The official statement referred to the case as the abduction of a U.S. citizen abroad, involving a U.S. national. Although no body was found, authorities believed the evidence was strong enough to justify an arrest. David was taken to a federal detention center in South Florida. His lawyers claimed he had cooperated with authorities, willingly shared information, and did not plan to escape. However, prosecutors contended that the substantial circumstantial evidence and the case's context created a significant risk that he might flee. David's arrest was a pivotal moment in the investigation. Until then, he had evaded authorities and avoided speaking publicly. Now, he was the focus of a federal case. The next step was to decide if he would remain in custody until the trial. After his arrest in Miami, David's first court appearance centered on his request for bail. The judge denied the request, citing a high risk of flight, and noted that the actions surrounding Anna's disappearance seemed well planned and executed. The judge highlighted the planning and sophistication as reasons for keeping David in detention. David's legal team appealed the decision, arguing that he posed no danger and did not intend to flee. They proposed a substantial bail amount, an ankle monitor, a travel ban, and home confinement. The defense emphasized David's long-term residence in the U.S., his clean record, and his willingness to cooperate with authorities. However, the court stood. The defense's main argument was that David could not have been in Spain when Anna disappeared. His lawyer presented passport stamps and travel records to show he arrived in Serbia well before February 2nd, claiming that David physically could not have been in Madrid at the time of the incident. The lawyer also noted that David did not speak Spanish, had no ties or residence in Spain, which would have made it difficult for him to plan such an act. Prosecutors were firmly opposed to the defense's claims. They pointed out that David's travels across Europe closely matched the timeline of Anna's disappearance. The evidence included the rental car's route, purchases of specific items, and other activities that suggested he had premeditated the act. Although there was no direct evidence, the prosecution insisted that the strong circumstantial evidence pointed to his involvement. To bolster their case, they presented the court with message transcripts, surveillance footage, phone records, and an analysis of David's behavior. It was argued that some of David's actions could not be mere coincidences. The judge acknowledged that the prosecution had built a substantial body of circumstantial evidence that created a convincing narrative. Although Anna's body had not been found, the evidence indicated that her disappearance involved aggressive intent and likely implicated David specifically. The judge addressed the defense's claim that the evidence was inadequate by clarifying that the requirement for bail is not beyond a reasonable doubt, but preponderance of the evidence. This means the court does not need absolute proof of guilt, only a significant likelihood of risk, like the chance of fleeing or obstructing the investigation. Therefore, the court chose to keep David in custody. His legal team announced they would appeal the bail denial and have filed a formal complaint with the district court, which can review the decisions of lower courts. As the main trial was approaching, David stayed in federal custody. The trial was expected to be lengthy, including expert testimony and international collaboration, and was likely to receive significant media coverage. Investigators began focusing on a woman, identified by the FBI, who might have helped create the suspicious text messages that seemed to come from Anna on February 3rd. This woman, fluent in Spanish, had previously interacted with David via a dating app. The texts sent from Anna's phone were in Spanish and did not match her usual writing style. As mentioned earlier, her close friends quickly noticed that the phrasing resembled a machine translation, a viewpoint later confirmed by linguistic forensic analysis. The defense maintained that there was no direct evidence linking David to the crime. His attorneys highlighted that no one had seen him at Anna's apartment, and there was no evidence of contact between them on the day she went missing. They also questioned the reliability of surveillance footage that showed a man with a suitcase, arguing that it could depict someone else, as the resemblance was not conclusive. Additionally, they emphasized that there had been no official confirmation of Anna's death through forensic evidence. On April 28, 2025, it was reported that David Nezovich, who had been charged with the abduction and presumed death of his wife, Anna, was found dead in his cell at a federal detention center in Miami. His attorneys stated that he took his own life, and no suicide note was discovered. At the time of his death, he had been held without bail while awaiting trial. Anna's family expressed deep sadness and frustration over the situation. Since the trial did not take place, Anna's whereabouts remain unknown. Her loved ones believe that David took the answers about what really happened on the night she disappeared with him. Marilena Rosari was a 58-year-old woman living with her husband in Castellanza, Italy. They had 2 grown daughters who lived on their own and had children of their own, making Marilena a grandmother. She worked as a promoter in supermarkets located in the province of Varese. By 2017, she viewed herself as a successful individual, enjoying a peaceful life while taking care of her family. On Sunday, July 30, 2017, Marilena and her husband visited a mutual friend's house for dinner in a nearby town. They spent a few hours there before returning home together to Castellanza. It was a typical quiet evening for them. However, once they arrived home, her husband had other plans. He planned to visit his elderly mother in the nearby town, as she was unwell and needed help with housework. He was absent all evening and night, returning home the next morning around 10:30 a.m. He expected to find his wife at home since she usually left for work later. Typically, at that time, she would be enjoying her morning routine, having breakfast, getting ready, and occasionally doing some cleaning. To his surprise, Marilena was missing. Initially, her husband thought she might have gone to work earlier than usual, possibly due to a last-minute request. However, Marilena always communicated any changes to her schedule and would not just disappear without notice. Moreover, that morning, she had planned to spend time with him to discuss their future plans and some important matters. He started to feel anxious and tried to reach Marilena. After several unsuccessful attempts to call her mobile phone, he noticed it was turned off, which was unusual for her as she was always reachable during work hours. When he checked the house, he discovered more worrying signs. Her bag containing personal items and documents was missing, but her car was parked in the yard. This was strange since she never left without her car. Concerned, he went outside to look around the neighborhood. He talked to several neighbors who were awake and working in their gardens, but none of them had seen or heard anything unusual. He also called his daughters, but they had not heard from their mother either. Marilena's phone still remained off. Feeling restless, he decided to contact the police. However, they informed him that they could not file a missing person report until 24 hours had passed. It was not until July 31st, when he returned to the police station, that his report was finally accepted and the search began. During this time, he couldn't get in touch with Marilena. He reached out to everyone who knew her, including her daughters, relatives, and colleagues, but no one had seen her. By the time the police acknowledged the report of her disappearance, the management and staff at the supermarkets were already worried because she hadn't shown up for work in 2 days. Marilena was known for her punctuality and reliability. She never missed a shift, so her absence raised great concern. The police interviewed all of Marilena's co-workers. They were shocked by her disappearance and found no indications that anything was wrong. No one was aware of any issues she might have been dealing with, nor did it seem like she had plans for a long trip or any reason to leave unexpectedly. The last person to see and talk to Marilena was her husband, making him the first person law enforcement wanted to question. Detectives interviewed him multiple times to understand what happened before her disappearance. They aimed to find out if the couple had any issues that might have led Marilena to leave or if anyone harbored ill will toward her. Her husband found these suggestions ridiculous and dismissed them, stating that their family had never been involved in crime or shady activities, and they did not have any enemies. Detectives interviewed Marilena's friends and found that they had no useful information. Her husband mentioned one concerning detail: the family was facing financial troubles, owing €10,000 to the bank. However, this lead seemed unhelpful since they were consistently making payments on the loan. He also provided documentation proving that both he and Marilena were fulfilling their financial obligations without issues. The police explored various possibilities, ranging from a voluntary disappearance to a potential crime, but after several days, they had no concrete answers. Meanwhile, Marilena had not used her phone or bank cards, raising concerns about her well-being, as it's difficult for anyone to survive long without money, a phone, or a car. A press conference was held to gather more information about Marilena's disappearance, and a television appeal was broadcasted to raise awareness. The prosecutor's office requested a detailed description of the missing woman, which was shared on all channels along with a call for eyewitnesses to come forward. Unfortunately, this effort did not lead to any new information. To assist with the search, specially trained dogs were brought in. The dogs were taken around the house and the area by the gate, but they remained calm and did not indicate any scent. The courtyard and Marilena's car were also searched without any success. Additionally, Marilena's relatives appeared on television, made several public statements, and directly reached out to her in hopes of getting a response. Days went by, but Marilena was still missing. The critical timeframe for finding her alive had passed, and anxiety deepened as troubling thoughts arose. Her husband and daughters felt increasingly worried. Law enforcement still issued a nationwide appeal through various media to widen the search efforts. Meanwhile, relatives created and distributed flyers featuring Marilena's photo throughout the city. A week later, the police had almost lost hope of finding her alive and shifted their focus to the surrounding area, trying to identify anyone who might have been involved in her possible murder or kidnapping. Naturally, close relatives, especially her husband, became suspects. He was the last known person to have spent time with her. He claimed he was at his mother's house during the time she went missing, which raised suspicions. After appearing on television, he acted cautiously, seemingly avoiding drawing attention to himself. He explained this behavior by saying he wanted to evade media scrutiny, but law enforcement grew suspicious that there might be a more concerning reason behind his actions. Consequently, they began to investigate him more thoroughly. Detectives confirmed that the evening after her husband brought her home, he went to help his sick mother with housework. Neighbors saw them arrive together, and several witnesses confirmed that he left almost immediately afterward. He was not seen again until the next morning. Neighbors near his mother's house also supported his story, stating he arrived late in the evening, and the timing matched perfectly. CCTV cameras along the road recorded his car traveling to and from his mother's house at the times he mentioned. His alibi appeared solid and did not raise any suspicions. However, investigators were not quick to remove him from the list of suspects, as close acquaintances are often implicated in such cases. Therefore, they returned to that neighborhood hoping to gather more information from former neighbors. Local residents were interviewed, and detectives meticulously investigated Marilena's previous social circle to find any suspicious individuals who might have had an interest in the kidnapping or potential violent actions. At this stage, her husband appeared to be an unlikely suspect for several reasons. He and his wife were widely regarded as loving partners with minimal disagreements. He had no financial incentive to cause her harm, and he had a solid alibi. Meanwhile, the investigation continued to progress as new leads surfaced. After speaking with the couple's acquaintances at their former residence, the Carabinieri shifted their focus to Vito Clerico, a 64-year-old man who was well acquainted with Marilena and her husband, lived nearby. From the outset, Vito displayed a cautious demeanor and seemed anxious. During questioning, he changed his story multiple times, which raised significant suspicions. The investigation team focused on Marilena's neighbor to gather more information. Background checks revealed that he had no criminal record, and his relationship with Marilena did not initially cause any concerns. A mutual friend mentioned that they met at work when Marilena was a promoter at shopping centers. This was Vito working as a storekeeper at Marilena's workplace. Their jobs frequently brought them together, leading to regular communication. The friend described Vito as irresponsible, noting that he had a history of borrowing large amounts of money from others and either not repaying it or repaying it late. There were also rumors that Marilena had lent him money during their time together, which could suggest a possible motive for the crime. As a result, he was called in for questioning. During the interview at the station, Vito described receiving a call from Marilena on the night she disappeared. She asked to meet him at the station in Garbagnac Milanese, explaining that her husband was visiting his sick mother and could not assist her. She mentioned having important business in the city. Vito, being friends with her, agreed to meet, but Marilena never showed up. Initially, he thought she changed her mind and went home. However, several aspects of his story seemed suspicious. First, the timing was too late for any business dealings. Second, the timeline Vito provided did not align with the information the police had confirmed. According to the timeline, Marilena should have been preparing to go to the station while she was with her friends, but no one confirmed that she had any plans to go anywhere or contacted anyone. Additionally, since her husband was nearby, she could have asked him for help. All of this seemed illogical. Due to these inconsistencies, detectives decided to investigate Vito's account further. They discovered that his mobile phone was never registered on the route he claimed to have taken. Furthermore, he was not seen on any surveillance cameras, including those at the station. If Vito was telling the truth, he should have appeared on video. The most intriguing discovery was that the detectives found a woman in the recordings who looked like Marilena. This indicated that she had indeed visited Garbagnac Milanese, from which she never returned. Upon examining Vito's mobile phone, the detectives confirmed that he had received several calls in the days leading up to her disappearance. Marilena had repeatedly tried to contact him, but he had consistently ignored her. However, on the night she disappeared, there was no call from her to him. Instead, there was a single outgoing call from Vito to her number on the evening of July 30th, 2017. This evidence directly contradicted his account of events. During the conversation, one of the detectives spotted dark red stains on Vito's trousers that looked like blood. Vito quickly claimed that he raised rabbits and that the stains might have come from butchering one of them, as he owned around 40 rabbits. However, the police doubted his story, confiscated the trousers, and sent them to a lab for testing. The analysis confirmed that the stains were human blood, specifically matching that of Marilena. Vito was unable to explain this finding. On September 11, 2017, he was arrested, 40 days after Marilena had disappeared. He was charged with murder and concealing her body. During interrogations, Vito provided confusing and inconsistent accounts that varied from day to day, filled with odd details, but he did not provide any clear confessions or truth. Eventually, he was worn down and agreed to tell investigators where Marilena's body, while still denying that he was the murderer. He claimed he helped the real killer hide her body out of fear for himself and his wife. Vito was compelled to assist in disposing of a body, and he kept the identity of Marilena's killer a secret. On September 12, authorities began excavating his backyard, specifically in a small garden in Garbagnate Milanese. At the exact spot Vito indicated, they found a shallow grave approximately 40 centimeters deep. Inside, they discovered a decapitated body wrapped in multiple layers of polyethylene and placed in a bag, which was partially covered in concrete. The advanced decomposition of the remains and the missing head complicated the identification process. Although the clothing resembled Marilena's, there were no identifying features, like tattoos, scars, or fractures, to confirm her identity. As a result, identification needed to be made using dental records. In the meantime, police continued to search for the missing head. Vito, for unknown reasons, refused to cooperate with law enforcement. His behavior was quite unusual, leading them to suspect he might be feigning mental disorders to claim insanity during the trial and evade punishment for the murder. It was revealed that he had been diagnosed with minor mental health issues in the past and had taken medication, but he had recently stopped. Eventually, under pressure from detectives, Vito started talking again. He claimed that he not only helped hide Marilena's body but also beheaded her after the murder. He said a certain killer had ordered him to do this. The decapitation was a deliberate act to make identification more difficult. Vito stated that he had thrown the head in a dumpster. Given how much time had passed, it was likely that the head had already been taken to a dump outside the city, making it nearly impossible to find. However, the authorities were skeptical. Every claim he made needed to be verified. While interrogating Vito, the police also spoke with his family members. One of them mentioned that Vito owned several plots of land. He recalled seeing Vito heading toward one of the most remote plots the day after Marilena's disappearance. This plot was an abandoned field located between Garbagnate Milanese and the town where Marilena lived. The suspect owned property there but typically did not visit without a valid reason. The family members speculated that Vito might have gone to this isolated area to dispose of Marilena's head. Before beginning their search for the head, the police rechecked Vito's mobile phone. This allowed them to confirm that he had indeed traveled to that location, helping to narrow down the search area. A large search team was organized, which included specially trained dogs. The task was made more difficult by the thick growth of blackberries in most of the area. The team thoroughly searched the abandoned field. A few hundred meters from the road, they found a bag hidden in the bushes. It was the same bag that Marilena usually took with her for errands and shopping. Inside the bag was Marilena's head. On September 26th, the body was finally confirmed to be that of Marilena Ree, a 58-year-old woman who had been missing. However, one question still lingered: what was the motive behind her murder? It is believed that it was likely connected to financial issues. Investigators discovered that in 2014, Marilena had loaned Vito and his wife a significant amount of money, approximately €80,000, from her savings. Vito had persuaded a mutual acquaintance that he and his wife were struggling with the bank due to overdue loans and were at risk of losing their home. Trusting his word, Marilena lent him the money, believing he was honest. In the following years, Vito repeatedly delayed paying back the debt, relying on Marilena's patience and her lack of urgent financial needs. However, Marilena eventually needed the money and requested a quick repayment. When Vito failed to return the funds, she had to take out a bank loan, planning to pay it off as soon as she received her repayment from Vito. Despite her growing insistence on getting her money back, Vito still did not repay the debt. On that significant evening, after her husband went to visit his mother, Marilena likely chose to confront Vito about the money. It is unclear how she ended up in the nearby city. During their discussion, Vito refused to return the money, which prompted a violent reaction from Marilena. This led to a conflict that escalated into a fight. A forensic expert noted that before Marilena was beheaded, she was hit on the head with a blunt object at least 6 times. The specifics are hard to determine due to multiple fractures in her skull and facial bones. Additionally, the remains had deteriorated significantly, complicating the examination further. After the murder, Vito cut off his victim's head, buried the body in a shallow grave near his house, wrapped it in several layers of plastic, and partially covered it with concrete. He had only a small amount of building materials, which was insufficient to fully hide the burial site. He placed the head inside her bag, took it out of town, and threw it deep into the thorny bushes on his remote property, hoping it would never be discovered. Even though the reconstruction of the events was supported by various pieces of evidence, Vito did not confess to the crime. Searches of his house and car found traces of blood and indirect evidence suggesting that he was not alone in committing the crime. Unfortunately, not all details could be uncovered. Vito completely denied any involvement of his wife or anyone else, claiming that a third party was responsible but refusing to identify them. After several interrogations, he ultimately took the blame for the crime. Vito's defense attorney claimed that his confession was coerced, noting that he had been questioned at least 10 times and believed his rights were violated. Initially, he only admitted to hiding the remains but did not confess to murder. However, he later claimed to have killed Marilena. Eventually, his story changed again, and he denied everything. The lawyer suggested that someone else must have committed the crime, indicating the possible involvement of a third party. However, this theory could not be supported by witnesses or the evidence gathered. Without any solid leads on the identity of this mysterious person, the idea was dismissed. All of Vito's inconsistent statements, which raised suspicions among investigators, were attributed to an effort to protect his wife. The next step focused on Vito's mental state. Psychiatric evaluations were performed, which found no significant issues. The prosecution claimed that the concealed body, beheading, and the discarded bag far from the city pointed to premeditated murder, a well-planned crime. It was clear that the defendant had intentionally lured the victim into a trap. However, despite the strong arguments and evidence, Vito cleverly kept altering his story, apparently aiming to confuse the investigation. In a desperate attempt to defend himself, Vito tried to argue that the prosecution was biased against him. His lawyer suggested this was to make him a scapegoat and resolve the case quickly. The accused also mentioned having amnesia, which he said prevented him from remembering the days surrounding Marilena's murder. He ultimately confessed to hearing voices of demons that had tormented him for years, leading him to kill Marilena. However, these claims were disproven through investigations, and multiple witnesses stated they had never seen him exhibit signs of mental illness. Throughout the investigation, Vito remained calm and did not show signs of significant stress, which is uncommon for someone with mental health issues. The only medical condition identified in him was epilepsy, but he experienced seizures very rarely. Even if they happen more frequently, aggressive behavior is not typical for those with epilepsy. Detectives were intrigued by Vito's desperate attempts to shift the focus away from his wife. From the start, she appeared to be a potential accomplice in the murder. Investigators viewed her as more dominant and assertive than Vito, leading them to suspect she might have been the mastermind behind the crime. As they dug deeper, they uncovered more compelling information. Marilena was not the only woman deceived by Vito. He frequently borrowed large amounts of money from relatives, friends, and colleagues, ranging from 30,000 to 100,000 euros, to finance the construction of his house. This project became an obsession for both Vito and his wife, who had long dreamed of building a grand villa. To achieve their goal, they took on significant debts and loans, often borrowing again just to make payments and delay the associated issues of non-payment. By the time Marilena was murdered, they were under immense pressure from creditors. It is likely that everyone who lent them money was in danger, just as Marilena was. Due to the extensive examinations needed for a thorough investigation of the deceased's body, the burial did not take place until 10 months after the body was found. The funeral was held on June 1, 2018. By the end of January 2019, the trial of Vito began. From the start, his inconsistent statements, confessions, and retractions created a sense of distrust. The defense attorney struggled to effectively counter the prosecution's arguments, achieving only limited success in reducing the charges. Initially, it was thought that the murder involved torture, but a forensic expert later confirmed that the severed head and some of the body mutilations occurred after death. On January 24, 2019, Vito, who is 66 years old, was sentenced to life imprisonment. He appealed the verdict, but his appeal was rejected. Investigations into his wife's possible involvement in Marilena's death are still ongoing. On November 21, 2017, Vito was attacked in prison by his cellmate. His cellmate used a metal plate and a makeshift weapon during the assault. Vito reported that he had tried to stop all communication with his cellmate, who had made clear abuse advances that escalated into harassment. When Vito threatened to report his cellmate's behavior, he was attacked. While in prison, Vito continually expressed his dissatisfaction with the justice system, insisting on his innocence and asking for safety from his hostile cellmate. Despite his requests, he was sent back to prison after receiving treatment. On Sunday, November 29, 2020, he was found dead in the prison toilet. In his hand was a note that powerfully criticized the Italian law enforcement. He died after swallowing a garbage bag, which obstructed his airway and led to suffocation. Many suspect that he did not take his own life and that the incident was planned by his cellmate. In 2020, the story of a young British woman named Angel Lynn shocked the entire United Kingdom. She had been stuck in a harmful relationship with a man involved in crime who faced serious legal issues. Whenever Angel tried to leave, the situation worsened. During her last attempt to escape, it turned into a kidnapping and a life-threatening incident. Thankfully, Angel survived, but her life now is very different. Angel Lynn was born in a suburb of Loughborough, Leicestershire in England Midlands. She was the youngest daughter in a family of 6 children. Her parents, Patrick, often called Paddy by friends, and Nikki, were ordinary people. Patrick operated a small retail business, while Nikki dedicated herself to managing the household and caring for their children. Although the Lynn family was not wealthy, their business provided a steady income to meet their basic needs. They lived in a spacious and comfortable home, working hard to ensure their children received a good education. Angel had a strong, loving bond with her family, especially with her mother, Nikki. She confided in her mom about everything, her future plans, dreams, and concerns. From a young age, Angel was very energetic. She excelled in school, participated in sports, and had many friends. Others viewed her as ambitious, principled, someone who stood up for what was right. She aspired to attend college to study law and work in the justice system. Angel was well known for her stunning looks and slender. With her bright blonde hair, deep blue eyes, she always drew attention and brightened up any event. Many people admired her, but she seldom went on dates due to her busy schedule. Angel cherished her independence and was committed to being self-sufficient. While still in high school, she worked part-time as a waitress at a local fast food restaurant. She diligently saved money for college and bought her own clothes, makeup, and personal items. After finishing high school, Angel successfully entered her dream college. She chose to become a crime scene investigator and enrolled in a program to help her reach that goal. She juggled her studies, work, and sports with impressive energy. Everything was going smoothly until she met a young man named Che Boskill, who took everything away from her. Che Boskill was the younger son of his mother. He grew up with his older half-brother. His mother single-handedly raised the boys, as neither of their father was involved in their lives. She worked multiple jobs from early morning to late at night to support them, which meant that money was always tight. Because she was rarely home, she spent little time with the boys, leaving them to take care of themselves in less than ideal living conditions. Che exhibited aggressive behavior from a young age, causing concern among those around him. He frequently had outbursts of anger, got into fights, and faced continuous trouble. As a teenager, he encountered legal issues and was arrested multiple times. Despite this, his mother always intervened to defend him, viewing her younger son as nearly perfect despite his actions. His older brother also faced legal troubles, but Che ultimately became a more serious offender while still in school. Nevertheless, their mother did not see any issue with their behavior and did not view them as a bad person. At only 15 years old, Che got involved in crime. He began by stealing cars and taking them apart for parts. Soon after, he joined a local gang where he quickly built a reputation, found his role. It's important to mention that Che was following his brother's path. However, his brother was less aggressive and better at managing his anger. Che loved motorcycles and cars, but instead of just driving, he sped down the streets at high speeds. He obtained his driver's license and, for some time, drove cars for his friends in the gang. By the age of 18, he had purchased his own car with money earned from illegal activities. He frequently drove while under the influence of alcohol and banned substance. On one occasion, he caused a serious accident by crashing into a utility pole, which resulted in him being hospitalized. Although he lost his driver's license, he continued to drive stolen cars and even live-streamed his dangerous driving around town. As Che became more entrenched in organized crime, he escalated from minor crimes like petty theft and carjackings to more severe offenses, including robbery and banned substance dealing. He and his associates began to steal luxury cars on demand and targeted affluent individuals. Che took pride in being a bad guy. Despite being arrested multiple times, he consistently managed to evade significant penalties, often receiving only light sentences. Che had a captivating appearance and a charming personality, despite his reckless behavior and self-destructive lifestyle. Even as a teenager, he easily attracted the attention of girls. When his illegal activities started making money, he spent it lavishly to impress those he liked. However, his bad temper and aggressive nature prevented him from maintaining any meaningful relationships. Che was a manipulative bully who wasn't afraid to resort to violence. While he could initially charm a girl, most would leave once they recognized his true nature. Unfortunately, not everyone was fortunate enough to get away. In early 2019, Angel met a man while spending time with mutual friends. They were both the same age and attended the same university, quickly discovering that they had much in common. Their immediate chemistry led to a budding friendship that soon blossomed into a romantic relationship. Within a few weeks, they introduced each other to their families, indicating that they were serious about their commitment. Hattie and Nikki were pleased with their daughter's choice, as her boyfriend came from a good family and was a decent person. Similarly, his parents welcomed Angel warmly. They spent a lot of time at each other's homes. Their friends and family often joked about a possible wedding in the future. Just 6 months into their intense relationship, they unexpectedly broke up for unclear reasons. Her boyfriend initiated the breakup, leaving Angel feeling heartbroken. Shortly after, he began dating someone new, prompting Angel to distance herself from mutual friends to avoid seeing them together. She found herself isolated, without her boyfriend or friends. Though her family supported her, she fell deeper into sadness. Even focusing on her studies and work didn't provide much relief. During a challenging period in her life, Angel met someone who would become very important to her. By chance, she crossed paths with Che. He was immediately taken with her beauty. He approached her, asked why she seemed sad, suggested they take a walk and get coffee. Angel needed someone to confide in, and Che proved to be a surprisingly good listener. They exchanged phone numbers, quickly began talking and meeting regularly. Che made an effort to impress her with his kindness and support. Before long, Angel realized she was developing feelings for him. At that moment, she truly believed she had found someone deserving of her time, effort. Che tried to impress Angel by showering her with expensive gifts. He taking her to trendy clubs, restaurants, and concerts. She wanted to learn more about his job, but he was very good at concealing his illegal activities. One evening, Angel invited him to dinner at her parents' house. What was supposed to be a warm family meal turned into a heated argument due to Che's arrogant behavior, which upset Angel's parents. Afterward, Nikki, Angel's mother, expressed her concerns about Che and urged Angel to end the relationship. To avoid upsetting her parents, Angel told them that she and Che were just friends, promised to spend less time with him. However, Angel and Che continued their secret relationship, never thinking about breaking up. Che made reservations at fancy hotels for their romantic evenings together. Angel felt she was with a good man, she had fallen in love with him. Che was still in frequent contact with his girlfriend. They called each other many times a day and sent constant texts. He often inquired about her whereabouts, activities, companions. Trusting him, Angel shared everything, believing this was his way of showing he cared. Unfortunately, this was actually the start of his controlling and manipulative behavior. In just a few months, Che learned everything about Angel, her whereabouts, her friends, her work and school schedules. He earned her trust and started to distance her from friends he didn't like. He pressured Angel to lie to her parents, creating a rift between her and her family. By August 2019, his control grew stronger. He dictated her clothing choices, restricted her conversations, even banned her from wearing makeup. Che regularly checked her phone, deleting contacts he disapproved of. He constantly monitored her, questioning her about unplanned outings and showing up if she was out longer than usual. The situation escalated to the point where Angel couldn't greet a male acquaintance without provoking a fierce argument. Her parents started to notice significant changes in her behavior. Once lively, cheerful, Angel became pale and withdrawn. She stopped wearing makeup, started dressing in baggy clothes, and seemed constantly anxious. She became secretive, always clutching her phone and hurrying away to be alone whenever it rang. Her conversations with her mother and sisters dwindled, leading them to become suspicious. When anyone asked how she was doing, she insisted everything was fine, but her reassurances sounded less convincing each time. As a result, the distance grew between Angel and her family. Che took control of her life, turning her from a vibrant young woman into someone isolated and invisible, who believed her only worth was to him. Che began to control every part of Angel's life, even trying to persuade her to quit school and work, promising to handle everything for her. Despite this, Angel was determined to pursue her dreams. Che's control grew stronger. He accessed her social media accounts, installed a tracking app on her phone. He monitored her every move and conversation. He could appear anywhere at any time, which made Angel feel constantly anxious, on edge. Under his pressure, Angel got a tattoo of his name on her arm, as if he had branded her as his own. Che treated her like property. He would call her multiple times a day, even at night, insisting that she turn on her camera so he could see where she was and who was with her. Angel reached her breaking point, tried to end the relationship several times, but Che refused to let her go. What started as a romantic relationship turned into pure manipulation. Che effectively stalked her, controlling her every action, all under the guise of love and concern. In January 2020, Che and several friends were arrested for trying to steal a car, received 4-month prison sentences. For Angel, this seemed like an opportunity to break free from a toxic relationship that was going nowhere. However, she was wrong. Every day, Che was allowed to make a phone call, and he used it each evening to contact Angel. His friends watched her and reported back to him. Angel felt constantly monitored and powerless to escape her fear. At the end of May, Che was released from prison. He immediately went to Angel's house and caused a scene. When Angel tried to break up with him again, he demanded that she pay him back about 80 pounds, which he claimed to have spent on her before he was imprisoned. Angel quickly gave him all the money she had saved, but the harassment worsened. A week later, Che physically attacked Angel for the first time. Just a week after that, he assaulted her again, and a bystander, concerned for Angel's safety, called the police. However, Angel chose not to press charges, so Che faced no repercussions. On July 9, 2020, a neighbor of Che's called the police because he heard a woman screaming for help. At that time, Che had pinned Angel to the ground and hit her head against the floor. Although Angel needed medical help afterward, she did not report the incident. In the following months, she continued to experience psychological and physical abuse from Che. Fearful of what Che might do to her or her family, she remained silent about the situation and tried to endure it, even though she realized it couldn't last forever. In September of that year, Angel made the difficult decision to end her relationship for good. Che reacted strongly, physically attacking her, leaving her with scrapes and significant bruises on her face. After the incident, he appeared to calm down, even apologized, vowing to be more respectful in the future. However, Angel believed he wouldn't genuinely change and pushed to end the relationship entirely. She felt certain that the toughest and most dangerous challenges were still ahead, but she was prepared to face them. Che, after making several attempts to win Angel back, proposed that they should at least stay friends. Angel agreed, thinking that if he believed they were still on good terms, he might lose interest in her, stop pursuing her. On September 17, 2020, Angel went to work, later committed to picking up Che and his friend Rocco Sansom in their van. They frequently relied on her as their driver, especially when they were too drunk or under the influence of substances to drive themselves. That day was no exception. Angel arrived at the designated parking lot, where the van was parked. Che and Rocco were waiting. Once everyone was inside the van, they drove off. Angel and Che had a heated argument while driving. She pulled over, stopped the vehicle, and jumped out, running away quickly. This incident was recorded by street surveillance cameras. In the footage, Che can be seen angrily chasing after her. He catches her and forces her back into the van before taking the driver's seat himself. The vehicle then sped away, completely disregarding traffic laws. This situation amounted to a kidnapping, as Angel was trapped inside the van with two men. She was clearly terrified. It's unclear what she experienced during that time. In the next 15 minutes, the police received numerous reports about a suspicious van speeding away from town, with the driver behaving erratically. However, officers couldn't respond in time before a tragic event occurred. Suddenly, the passenger door of the van flew open, and Angel fell out at high speed, narrowly avoiding being struck by two cars following closely behind. Fortunately, the drivers reacted quickly and stopped their vehicles. They rushed to her aid. Someone called the police. Meanwhile, the van continued for about 100 kilometers per hour as if nothing had happened, then slowed down and returned to the scene. To any onlookers, it might have appeared that the driver had simply dropped something small and returned to retrieve it. Che approached the gathering calmly, told those present that the injured young woman was his girlfriend, that they had just argued. He said he wanted to break up with her and that she had lost control, attempting to jump out of the moving van. However, his account seemed unconvincing. He stayed on the scene, waited for the medics and police to arrive, repeating his story verbatim. It was evident that he believed Angel wouldn't survive. He seemed to be shifting all the blame onto her. His friend Rocco, who was also in the van, supported his version of events, mirroring his words. Despite her severe injuries, Angel was still breathing when she was rushed to the nearest hospital by ambulance. Unfortunately, the chances of saving her were low. She had broken ribs, broken limbs, a compression fracture in her spine, and many cuts, bruises. The most critical injury was a traumatic brain injury that led to significant bleeding in her brain. For several days, doctors fought tirelessly to save her life. She underwent multiple complex surgeries, including one to remove part of her skull to relieve pressure on her brain. Her heart stopped several times, and she was clinically dead on those occasions, but the medical team was able to revive her each time. Eventually, Angel was placed in a medically induced coma and put on life support. Her chances of waking up were nearly non-existent. The doctors were astonished that she had survived the initial accident, but their outlook was bleak. They warned the Lynn family that, even if she miraculously survived and could breathe independently, she would likely remain bedridden and in a permanent vegetative state. They suggested considering the option of disconnecting her from the costly life support machines, but her parents refused to even think about it. Che and Rocco were held at the scene and taken to the police station for questioning. They both insisted they had done nothing wrong, claiming that Angel was out of control and that the incident stemmed from her attempts to take her own life. However, security camera footage showed a different reality. Che was charged with kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, causing serious physical harm. Rocco was arrested as an accomplice. Both remained in jail while waiting for their court appearances. The trial started in January 2022, with new charges of assault and harassment added. The defendants did not admit guilt. The prosecutors failed to provide clear evidence that Angel was intentionally thrown from the moving van. As a result, the jury could not come to a unanimous verdict, leading to the defendants receiving relatively light sentences. Rocco was sentenced to just 21 months in prison for his involvement, while Che received a 7-year sentence. The Attorney General referred Che Bauskil's sentence to the Court of Appeal under the lenient sentences scheme. In March 2022, the court increased his sentence to 12 years. However, Che will still be eligible for parole after serving 8 years. Despite the doctor's discouraging predictions, Angel continued to fight for her life. Although she suffered significant brain damage, she eventually began to breathe on her own. After a few months, the doctors lifted her from the medically induced coma. Initially, she did not recognize anyone, could not control her movements, and needed to be fed through a tube. There were no indications that she was aware of her surroundings. Meanwhile, Angel's cousin, Farron Davis, has set up a GoFundMe page to help her recover from the horrific incident. Kind strangers and members of her community have donated nearly £200,000, which will be used to renovate the family home, as they have received no assistance from the council. Angel is now doing well and will soon be able to move out of the flat and live with her family once the construction work is complete. Her sister, Rhiannon, is planning to move nearby from Newcastle so she can join her mother in looking after her. In the spring of 2022, her parents brought her home to care for her themselves. A year later, in May 2023, Angel amazed everyone by starting to respond to her environment. Just a month after that, she looked at her mom, Nikki, and called out, "Mom." Now, Angel Lynn is going through a lengthy rehabilitation process, has even begun to take her first steps. Although the doctors are skeptical about her returning to her previous life, her parents refuse to accept that possibility because their daughter has shown time and again that she is a fighter.
Larissa Rodriguez grew up in a humble but close-knit family. Her parents were modest and reserved. They raised her with strong values of integrity, a strong work ethic, and family loyalty. From an early age, Larissa showed remarkable discipline. She trained in gymnastics, later graduated with a degree in sports science, and worked as a trainer and instructor at a fitness club. She led a healthy lifestyle, avoided harmful habits, meticulously cared for her well-being. She had only one serious relationship with Luis Antonio Garnica, who became her first partner and later her husband. To the family, he seemed quiet and polite. Larissa believed in the ideal of a strong family, and despite strains in their relationship, she remained committed to preserving the marriage. Luis came from a well-off background. His father had served as mayor of Pontal, and Luis himself was trained in medicine. But behind that veneer of success, he was self-centered and calculating. According to Larissa's relatives, at the beginning of their relationship, he had no steady income and depended on Larissa's mother, who sent him home, cooked meals over time. Despite having a diploma, his finances never improved, and he struggled to support two parallel lives, his official marriage and a secret relationship. His standing among Larissa's friends and family deteriorated. He grew increasingly withdrawn, distant, and indifferent. Even during Larissa's mother's final days, he visited only when forced. In the last months of the marriage, Luis was emotionally detached, cold, and often degraded his wife about her appearance, avoiding any real communication. Despite her efforts to reconcile, he continued to move further away, ignoring the obvious signs of their relationship's crisis. Elizabete Arabaza, Luis's mother, played a pivotal role in this story. At 68, she appeared quiet and unassuming, but in reality, she was a manipulator with a troubling history. Her former husband and her daughter claimed she had a gambling problem and was deeply in debt. There were suspicions surrounding her involvement in the mysterious death of a relative connected through financial dealings. She often asked acquaintances for money and was suspected of selling others' jewelry. Her behavior within the Garnica family drew mixed opinions. With Larissa, she maintained the image of a caring mother-in-law, yet she regularly shared confidential information with her son and withheld crucial details from her daughter-in-law. Over time, it became clear she had played a decisive role in tearing the family apart and setting the stage for the tragic events that followed. These three figures, Larissa, Louise, and Elisabetta, became the central players in a chain of events whose outcomes were irreversible. In the spring of 2025, tensions between Larissa and Louise escalated dramatically. Their conflicts had become a regular occurrence, and any remaining trust was shattered. Louise's behavior grew increasingly distant. He often claimed to be working late or on call, but in reality, he was frequently meeting with another woman named Letitia. Larissa didn't know the woman's name at first, but she began to suspect he was seeing someone else, especially after noticing odd changes in his routine and his frequent irritation for no clear reason. Her suspicions were confirmed after she discreetly followed him one evening in mid-March. Larissa spotted Louise heading toward Letitia's house on a night he claimed to be working an overnight shift. Not long after that, she found personal items in his car, along with a medical-grade anesthetic, which clearly indicated a secretive relationship. She confided in Elisabetta, her mother-in-law, hoping for understanding. Instead, Elisabetta quickly told Louise about the confrontation and criticized Larissa for spying on him. Rather than receiving comfort, Larissa was told that being unfaithful is just something men do. Larissa didn't act on impulse. Despite her personal disappointment, she still tried to preserve her family. According to her father, she wanted to have a calm conversation with Louise and find a peaceful resolution. Over the next few days, she spoke privately with close friends about the possibility of divorce, but asked them not to get involved. Meanwhile, a friend offered her temporary use of an unoccupied apartment to help her take a step back and think things through. On March 15, 2025, Larissa tells Louise of her decision to end the marriage. She also confirmed her intentions to a trusted friend. Her goal was to reduce tension and prepare for a respectful separation. The following day, March 16th, Elisabetta Arabata began researching highly toxic substances online. That same day, she offered Larissa homemade soup. Larissa, unaware of any danger, accepted the meal. Within hours, she began experiencing severe gastrointestinal symptoms, including cramps and nausea. Despite feeling unwell, Larissa assumed the discomfort was caused by stress or possibly spoiled food. On March 18th, Larissa once again opened up to a close friend, expressing how drained she felt physically and emotionally. She said her energy was slipping away and shared her concern that Louise continued to avoid any meaningful conversation. At the same time, Elisabetta, his mother, became unusually attentive, bringing food, initiating frequent visits, and insisting on helping Larissa, despite previously criticizing her for wanting to leave the marriage. By March 19th, Larissa confided in a relative about her worsening condition. She described sudden chills, weakness, abdominal pain, and an overwhelming sense of dread. She noted that she had never experienced anything like it before, and that the symptoms had persisted for several days. That message would become one of the last times she discussed her health. On March 20th, Larissa told her father she no longer saw a future in the marriage. Though she was still hoping to avoid a public fallout, she wanted the divorce to be amicable, if possible. That day, Elisabetta seemed calm but continued bringing over food. Larissa, although feeling unwell, didn't yet suspect a link between the meals and her condition. She assumed her health issues stemmed from emotional stress. Then came March 21st. Elisabetta arrived again with homemade soup. Larissa's condition took a drastic turn for the worse. By late that evening, she stopped responding to calls and messages. A few hours later, the devastating news came. She had passed away. On the morning of March 22nd, 2025, Louise reported that he had found his wife unconscious in their apartment. He claimed he'd just returned from a night shift, walked in, and found Larissa lying on the floor. According to his account, he immediately began CPR and called emergency services. However, discrepancies between his story and the actual evidence began to surface within hours of the investigation. One critical detail was a message Luis sent to Leticia. At 10:25 m.m., he texted Leticia to tell her that Larissa had passed away. Just 9 minutes later, at 10:34 m., paramedics arrived. Yet, when they entered, Luis was still performing resuscitation efforts, claiming Larissa was showing signs of life. The medical team quickly determined otherwise. She was already in a state of rigor mortis, making revival impossible. Emergency personnel documented that her body was cold, with no pulse or breathing, and her skin showed clear signs consistent with an extended time of death. When police arrived at the scene, one of the first things they noted was Luis's insistence on a rapid cremation. He didn't notify Larissa's family right away about her passing and took it upon himself to begin arranging the necessary paperwork for cremation. This immediately raised red flags for investigators, especially since Larissa's cultural background strictly followed burial traditions, with cremation never being considered. At the scene, officers noticed that the environment had been tampered with, bed sheets had been stripped, rolled up towels with what appeared to be reddish stains were found nearby, and the laundry basket contained items possibly used for cleanup. The paramedic examining Larissa's body took note of undigested food in her stomach. This detail would later become a critical piece of evidence, prompting a full toxicology analysis. The initial assumption of a sudden cardiac event began to shift toward concerns about a possible poisoning. Luis's behavior on the day Larissa died seemed artificial, as if he were acting to make her death look like a sudden accident. The timeline, the messages he sent, and his behavior before and after emergency services arrived painted a picture that seemed increasingly rehearsed. At first glance, Luis seemed like a distraught husband caught in a crisis, but as investigators dug deeper, examining documents, message logs, and expert findings, the surface narrative started to unravel. Attention shifted from simply understanding what happened to examining who may have played a role in the moments immediately after Larissa's life ended. Following the official announcement of Larissa's death, Luis came under increasing scrutiny. Within just 24 hours of the incident, his actions raised serious concerns. The day after Larissa's passing, attempted financial transactions were discovered using her bank accounts. Luis used her debit card to purchase items at a pharmacy and attempted to withdraw cash from an ATM. Several of these transactions were flagged and declined due to suspicious activity. One attempt to access her savings account failed because of automatic security blocks. Later, bank officials confirmed that the attempted transactions originated from devices registered to Luis. At a local bank branch in Pontal, a teller reported an unusual request. Viviani, Luis's sister, attempted to obtain account information for Larissa. Despite having no legal authority to access those records, Larissa's account was registered in a different region, and Viviani's attempt to retrieve private financial data without a formal power of attorney was officially logged as an unauthorized access attempt. This incident immediately drew the attention of investigators. Meanwhile, Larissa's family, especially her brother and father, pushed for a thorough investigation into the circumstances surrounding her death. Troubled by rumors and inconsistencies, Larissa's brother sought legal counsel from attorney. Consultations with legal representatives began on March 24th, 2 days after her death. Despite online speculation suggesting Larissa may have taken her own life, her loved ones firmly rejected that possibility. According to those close to her, Larissa had no history of mental health struggles, maintained an active lifestyle, was in therapy, and had clear plans for her future, including filing for divorce. The attorney hired by Larissa's family demanded that no cremation take place until a full toxicological analysis was completed. This move proved critical to the case. The pathologist ordered a comprehensive examination, including toxicology screenings. While the initial exam did not pinpoint an immediate cause of death, the lab tests became central to developing the leading theory. At the same time, investigators focused on digital evidence, combing through text messages, GPS data, and call logs. Recovered chats between Louise, Viviani, and others provided deeper insight. One particularly telling exchange showed Viviani advising Louise to be cautious with their phones and not to confuse devices. In another message, she reminded him to mention a supposed history of heart conditions in Larissa's family when speaking to authorities. These texts were interpreted as an attempt to shape a false narrative and create a medically plausible explanation for what had occurred. While the investigation remained active, the family's lawyer successfully petitioned to freeze all of Larissa's financial accounts and restrict access to her assets. Authorities across relevant agencies were notified. These legal safeguards were essential in preventing further unauthorized actions by Louise and those allegedly working with him. At this point, investigators completely ruled out end her own life. Every move Louise and Viviani made following Larissa's passing appeared calculated, aimed at reducing exposure and covering their tracks. These patterns were sufficient to launch the formal phase of criminal proceedings. Roughly 1 month before Larissa passed away, another family member died under mysterious circumstances, Natalia, daughter of Elisabetti. At the time, the incident received no public attention. Natalia lived in Pontal with a long-term partner in a domestic relationship. Shortly before her death, she had a major falling out with her mother. Elisabetti strongly opposed Natalia's plans to start a family and become a parent. Their arguments centered around inheritance issues and shares in the family business. Following the disagreement, Natalia's partner left the house, leaving her alone with Elisabetti, something relatives later described as highly unusual. In the days that followed, Natalia complained of feeling increasingly unwell. However, Elisabetti never sought medical help or contacted emergency services. Instead, she reached out to Louise and Viviani, who were in another city at the time. The drive from Ribeirão Preto to Pontal takes approximately 40 minutes. During this time, Natalia remained without assistance. By the time Louise and Viviani arrived, Natalia's condition had deteriorated significantly. She was later taken to a hospital where she died. Eyewitnesses claimed that despite his medical training, Louise didn't advocate for emergency care and seemed more focused on when the death certificate would be issued. This detail was documented and became the subject of further investigation. Initially, Natalia's death was classified as natural, but as Larissa's case unfolded, new findings began to cast serious doubt on that conclusion. One red flag was the unexplained death of Natalia's dog. 2 weeks before the tragedy, relatives reported that the dog had no known health issues. Authorities approved the exhumation of the pet for toxicology testing based on the theory that poison might have been tested on the animal. Natalia's father, Antonio, revealed during questioning that Elisabetti was facing serious financial problems. He stated Elisabetti had debts exceeding 300,000 reais, some of which were linked to gambling. Natalia held a 16% share in the family business, which, because she had no dependent children, passed directly to her mother upon her death. Antonio also testified that not long before she passed, Natalia had mentioned receiving threats from her mother regarding her personal life. Elisabetti's alleged efforts to secure full control over those assets led to major tensions with her ex-husband. Further disturbing details emerged about Elisabetti's past. Years earlier, a friend recalled a strange episode. After having tea with Elisabetti, she experienced sharp abdominal pain, followed by unconsciousness. Emergency care saved her, and doctors later suspected a toxic substance had been involved. However, that case was never formally investigated. As Larissa's story gained public attention, more people connected to the Garnica family began stepping forward, sharing concerns about Elisabetti's behavior. After reviewing the series of suspicious patterns, investigators reached a preliminary conclusion. Natalia may have been the first confirmed victim, and her dog potentially part of a test run for what followed. The combination of poisoning, delayed medical response, concealed symptoms, and a motive rooted in inheritance formed a disturbing picture. From this point forward, the case took on a much broader scope. A deeper analysis of these incidents revealed a consistent pattern in Elizabeth's financial behavior. She repeatedly sought new sources of income, pressured those close to her, and manipulated legal access to property and assets. After Natalia and Larissa passed, these tactics intensified in the context of mounting debts and financial instability. Her motives became a central focus of the investigation. Amid the dual investigations into the deaths of Larissa and Natalia, law enforcement began uncovering information that hinted at additional potentially criminal episodes linked to Elisabetta Arrabate. The case involved a woman who had been friendly with Elisabetta. Years after an odd incident, she finally spoke out. Following a tea visit at Elisabetta's home, she suddenly felt dizzy, nauseous, and disoriented. Elisabetta offered her a headache remedy, a blue capsule. She took the pill, but was later hospitalized that night with suspected poisoning. Doctors documented toxic exposure to an unknown substance, but the woman never filed a report at the time. She later admitted she was afraid of becoming entangled in legal battles. Eventually, she reached out to Larissa's family attorney after media reports surfaced about possible poisonings. Yet another concerning event came to light. Elisabetta had attempted to obtain power of attorney from a woman expecting to receive court-ordered compensation. The woman, alarmed by Elisabetta's persistence, later told investigators she feared she might have been a future target. Her statement was formally included in the case files. According to law enforcement, a clear pattern was beginning to emerge in Elisabetta's actions. She would first establish close relationships with financially stable women, earn their trust, and shortly afterward, they would suffer sudden and unexplained health issues. Given these accounts, investigators began pursuing a new theory. They might be dealing with a series of connected incidents rather than isolated ones. Law enforcement officials issued a public appeal, urging anyone who had experienced suspicious behavior from Elisabetta Arrabate to contact authorities. Once the toxicology reports came in, the investigation entered a decisive phase. Forensic specialists confirmed the presence of a compound derived from chumbinho, a banned toxic substance in Larissa's system. This finding was pivotal. Until then, Louise and Elisabetta had claimed that Larissa passed away from natural causes, but the chemical evidence completely debunked their story. Another critical piece of the puzzle came from surveillance footage at the residential complex. Security cameras showed that, on the morning of March 22nd, Louise arrived at the apartment later than he had claimed, and Viviani arrived shortly before emergency services were called. These details directly contradicted their official statements. Taken together, the presence of a toxic compound, suspicious online searches, misleading explanations, tampered evidence, and timeline inconsistencies formed a clear chain of evidence. Investigators concluded that Larissa's death was not a random event, but a carefully coordinated act carried out by multiple individuals. The evidence didn't just suggest wrongdoing, it presented a legally viable case of premeditated criminal activity. By mid-April 2025, the investigation reached the stage of formal charges. Based on forensic data, digital correspondence, and verified discrepancies in witness accounts, police filed charges against three primary individuals: Elisabetta Arrabate, Luis Garnica, and his sister, Viviani Garnica. The main charge involved the intentional death of Larissa Rodriguez through poisoning. Investigators determined that Elisabetta had prepared Larissa's meals in the final days of her life, actively researched toxic substances, created a plan to conceal the act, and coordinated the actions of her family members. Luis was charged as an accomplice. He was aware of his mother's intentions, failed to intervene, concealed signs of poisoning, and helped destroy evidence afterward. He was also the one who pushed for rapid cremation, a move that could have eliminated the chance of detecting any toxic substances. Viviani was also named as an accomplice. Her role included coordination with her brother, erasing digital traces, attempting to access the victim's bank accounts, and helping conceal key details surrounding the incident. Recovered messages from her phone confirmed that she knew about Larissa's death in advance and was involved in planning how to speak with law enforcement and medical professionals. Simultaneously, a separate investigation was launched into the circumstances surrounding Natalia's passing. Another contributing factor was the earlier death of Natalia's dog, which had also raised alarms. While formal charges in Natalia's case had not yet been filed, the evidence was placed in a separate investigative file. The charges against all three individuals were formally submitted to the district attorney's office. Each was summoned for questioning. Following the interrogation, both Elisabetta and Louise were taken into custody. Viviani was placed under travel restrictions, required to remain within the region, and ordered to surrender her passport. Meanwhile, the court approved a request to seize Garnica family assets and freeze all accounts tied to the suspects. The case sparked significant public interest. Journalists, advocacy groups, and legal experts began a national conversation about the shortcomings in addressing domestic aggression, legal loopholes in women's protection, and missed warning signs. Many pointed out that the tragedy might have been avoided had social services intervened earlier. At this point, the charges have been formally established, and the investigation has completed the collection of core evidence. Next, the trial will proceed, with the expectation of revealing the whole truth to the public.